Knockback, the retro and nostalgia podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Knockback. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my brother, Dagan Moriarty. Dagan, good to see you today, my friend. How are you today?
That's enough about me. Look at this.
I know, this is insanity.
This is the debut of a podcasting superstar. You're getting your first taste. A star is born. Mom, don't blow it. You're on the hot seat. Maybe we're on the hot seat.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be so sure of that because I have a few things I need to say to everyone. Mom, welcome to the show. It's good to see you. This is our mother, Betty Ann Moriarty.
Thank you.
In Micah's space. It's not Micah. It's Mom, but she's in Micah's space. Mom, if you can name a single of those Dragon Ball characters behind you right now, one of them, I'll give you $1,000 cash.
Okay. Do I have to look?
Yeah, it's right on. Take a look.
I don't even see a dragon.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
It's not a good sign. Right. She doesn't even see a dragon.
Mom, it's good to see you today. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good.
It's nice to be here with my two boys.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. I thought this would be a fun,
Awesome.
This is going to go up during the Christmas break, and I thought this would be a fun one-off interstitial episode because I knew we had to do something. Dagan and I can always pull something out of our ass, but I thought this was something a little more deliberate and a little more interesting. And for some reason, as we always say on the show, like maybe not for some reason, people like these kinds of random family lore episodes even more than when we do some of the big products. So you're central to that. We talk about you all the time.
Yeah, well, you're a superstar on this show now.
Oh, yes, yes.
Only 6 years in the making. This is definitely going to be, this has all the promise of to be the best Knockback episode ever.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, and you're very sweet.
The person for which none of this would have been possible. Love us or hate us. This is the...
I'm to blame.
Yeah, exactly.
You're either to blame or to love.
You're welcome or you're sorry.
Oh, boy.
Well, Mom, we're recording on a Friday afternoon. And you came over after work. So you're still, what do you do for a living? Tell everyone out there what you do. We're a little disconcerted that you're still working.
I know.
It annoys all of us a great deal, including your own husband. So
I am my own woman. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, no, it's great. What do you do and when are you going to retire?
Okay. So presently, I am a recruiter for the county that I live in Henrico County, Virginia. I'm a job recruiter. And it's awesome. I love it. I love the job. I work with great people, but I think I'm ready to retire. Yeah. So I hope my boss doesn't listen to this.
Well, this is a common refrain. You've been ready to retire verbally at least for years on end. But
you know what? I actually went and spoke to the benefits people right before Thanksgiving.
Oh, great.
Oh.
I did.
Making it official. So the light's at the end of the tunnel.
I didn't sign anything yet. I didn't put, I know the date I want to retire. It'll be in June, mid-June. Right. I think it's actually going to be on my anniversary date.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I think it's just time to retire.
Yeah, you're going to get your retirement plus Social Security, right? And you're going to be living high on the hog, huh?
I'll be okay. If we sell the house in New Jersey, I'll be really okay.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to sell it. So we'll see.
Oh, God, this is like back and forth. I can't take it. This is a saga. This in and of itself is a saga that has engulfed the family dialogue for years. Yeah. You have my mom's husband, Larry, his parents owned a beach house in New Jersey, and my mom and Larry bought it straight up, I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe something like that, maybe more.
Yeah. When was that?
I think it was about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And then we lost it in Hurricane Sandy.
Right. So then in Hurricane Sandy, my mom had just renovated the entire house, and then Hurricane Sandy happened and it got all fucked up, and then basically had to just be redone entirely. But we've been, we have it. I haven't been there literally since college. But
God, really?
Yeah. But I haven't been there since before everything happened with the hurricane.
Right. That's right.
And yeah, it's this thing of let it go. I have this dream, Dig, and I don't know if you know this. I have this, and Mom, I've verbalized this to Mom because we might collaborate on it, which is in the mountains in the western part of Virginia or in West Virginia. I like West Virginia too. I want to buy land and build a house for the family and call it Brookhaven and allow everyone.
I
didn't know that was going to be the name. All right. So Appalachia, is that Appalachia technically?
I mean, it's like Blue Ridge and all that. Yeah.
Blue Ridge Mountains. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, so that's kind of like my dream. And I was thinking like mom and I could collaborate on that one day, use the money from the beach house. I'll pay, a bunch of it and we can figure it out or whatever. And then we can have a place for the Moriartys to gather, like where everyone can kind of use it.
I love that.
Just a little, little mountain getaway, as it were.
I love it. I mean, I'm attached to the idea of the Jersey, of Mom and Larry's Jersey house still, because I'm in the Northeast. So it's for selfish reasons. But let's be honest, we might be sunsetting the Northeast thing too in the Moriarty Philadelphia family. We may be heading down south too,
right,
at a certain point.
Oh, down here?
Down. That would be awesome, wouldn't it?
So who knows? Awesome. So yeah, that's interesting though. I think it's I'm gonna be sad the day you guys come to, and some sort of consensus on it for good and all. Either way, I think. Like it'll be the end of an era, because that house, it's you're a couple of decades deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what bothers me, it's like when we go there, we don't want to come back because it's so peaceful. It's just super peaceful. And remember, I live on railroad tracks, right? So you hear the train and everything. Not that bothers us. We don't even hear that anymore. But
the audience knows because I recorded shows for 5 months at your house. And
that's right.
Coming. Remember that?
Yeah. But it is so peaceful, and now we have the kayak, and we have the kayaks, and we have the paddleboard, and the kids love it. So I think it's really just a beautiful place. So I'm going to try to pay it. I'm trying to pay it ahead so I can keep it through the summer at least without paying for it, and then maybe we'll have to think about selling it or renting it.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah. Draw a little money, a little income off that bad boy.
It's so nice. I mean, being right on the water like that is awesome.
Become the landlord. Be careful.
I know.
The proletariat stirs.
Well, it bothers me because we lost it once. I would hate to have it's so perfect now, the house. I would hate to have someone ruin it. So it's a consideration.
The next time you're going to lose is when the Chinese bomb the East Coast.
All right. I'll sell it. I'll put it on the market tonight.
Well, Colin doesn't even know this because it's been a while for him. But, as you know, Mom, like post Sandy, post that whole storm, that particular pocket of the Jersey Shore where you guys are at was half a ghost town. I mean, it was really in bad shape.
Oh,
and it's come back over the last 5 years.
Bad. So
strong. Like there's no vacancies. It's owned to a house. There's so many families down there again. It was really cool to see it come back, but I think it came back stronger than it was ever. So it's a positive if you guys wanted to keep it, but it's also a positive if you guys wanted to sell it.
Yes.
Because the price has gone up astronomically.
Well, he wants to sell it.
Oh yeah, Larry's wanted to sell it.
Yeah, he wants to sell it, but he's just hanging on because of me. So anyway, we'll figure that out.
Yeah, it's like you said, Mom, I've long said to you, you're kind of tempting fate, I think, in this new environment where weather is just more wild and unpredictable and stuff. And it's like, man, if that happens again, I don't even know. Not because FEMA wouldn't come in and all of that, but because I think people at that point would be like, you shouldn't buy anything here.
But FEMA really didn't give us anything.
No, I know, but bad example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Long Island's going to be underwater at some point too. I mean,
I would like to sell it just because if we sell it, we can pay for this house and still have money left to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Colin.
I think that would be fun. I think that would just be cool to, I'm really into tradition and legacy. You guys know I'm a little sentimental. Mm-hmm. And it would be cool to leave something like that behind where ostensibly just keep this forever, even put it in a trust or something to be like, it cannot be sold.
Yeah.
And just hand it down from generation to generation, and just call it Brookhaven, have it in the mountains. And it'll be a good place in the mountains. We can, if there's some sort of communist revolution, we retreat to the mountains.
Oh my gosh.
And make do off the land. I'm not going to last very long, but maybe you guys will be better off. Dagan was what were you, a life scout, right?
Yeah. I didn't make it all the way to Eagle.
Yeah, Declan's an Eagle Scout now, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I donated to his project, actually.
Yeah, I donated to his project.
Yeah. Dude, it's so cool that he was able to, first and second generation Eagles in the Wasnock family.
And I think maybe Dan was an Eagle Scout.
Oh, you know what? You might be right.
Wow. Cool. That's our brother-in-law's dad.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't make Eagle. I didn't want to show up dad. Dad was an Eagle Scout.
Because Dad was only an Eagle
I can't do that
He
to
was
the
only
man.
a Life Scout too.
All right, Mom,
Yeah.
let's get into the nitty gritty. Dagan's 50. How do you feel about it?
I feel like I don't know how that happens when I'm only 53.
I told you you'd be taking a
it's
shot.
really-
Yeah, you're only 50. That's strange. Time dilation. It's like interstellar.
You know what? It's so weird having someone that's 50. He's almost 51. I heard what you said about me I heard what you said about me in the last podcast, that I am the queen of hyperbole. So I had to say it. I had to
Oh,
say
yeah.
it.
What we're referring to is, you don't do it so much anymore, but when I was younger, Mom, I'd be like, 17 or something. My mom would be like, you're going to be 20. What are you doing?
I never did.
You used to round up.
Yeah, like
I round up, but now you
Exactly.
round up 3 years. Come on.
Or no, like I'd be 18, maybe going to be turning 19 in 2 months. You'd be like, you're going to be 20. Like, oh my God, no, I'm not. Yeah, I love that. We
When
say
do
a
I
lot
have
of
a
things on the show. I'm
conflict?
sorry. I really, when at the wedding, when I
I
was
think
seeing all
it's
of our
funny.
aunts and uncles, like from Dad's side that we usually don't see, they're like, oh, we love the shows and all that. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, truly. I'm sorry that Dagan peed on one of your rugs.
I had to.
I remember that podcast.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh my God, I hope Aunt Barbara's not watching.
Yeah, that was like 6 weeks before I had to see them at Allie's wedding. But for some reason, I just decided, let's just get it out
Yeah,
there.
you got,
It's
yeah,
a
you
universe.
felt, yeah, you freed yourself.
It was a vetting. But Mom, you don't look, I feel worse at 50 than you should feel, I think, because you do not look like you have a 50-year-old child.
Oh,
I mean, you just look so good for your age. And you and Dad had me young, and Dana, and you had
were
kids young. You were
We did.
young.
Yeah, we were.
But yeah, man, it's got to be. I don't know if 50's really hit me yet. The number, like that half century thing, antique, 50, whatever you want to call it, right?
Well, I'm almost 3/4 of a century, even though I'm 2 years away from it.
Yeah, but you know what? You guys are like the last generation that are going to be this young to have 50-year-old children.
I think
Right?
you're right. Yeah, I think you're right.
100%.
Mhm.
Right? For the most part, there's anomalies like Dustin's parents are very young,
Right.
right? But
Even
for
younger,
the most
yeah.
part, generationally, right? It's going to be, you guys are going to look good. When you're not only far into having children, you're far into having grandchildren. You have grandchildren approaching their 20s now, late teens, 20s. I mean, it's pretty incredible.
I know. I mean, I can't believe that Declan will go to college next year. It's crazy.
Goodness gracious.
And then
It's
Will
insane.
in like 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little crazy.
Yeah,
It's a
time.
little crazy.
What do you, this is such a strange thing, but I've been thinking about it recently do you guys share the feeling that you don't really remember very many specifics about specific ages or times as you get older? Like, you were there, you have a feeling of it, you know what happened, but it's like, give me a memory from this time. I'm finding it harder and harder to put myself in certain places and situations. I wonder how that is as you get even older. It must be even more profound, as if you lived it in another life. Like, I feel my time in New England, for instance, is like another life. Like, that never even happened almost.
Mm.
That's how
Right.
long ago and weird it is in my mind compared to where I came from. But it actually occurred. And even college, I went to college more than 20 years ago. It's like, what?
Oh, that's crazy to even think like
Isn't
that.
that wild?
Yeah, that's really crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do remember things. And I'm going to say something which you don't know yet. My friend Terry passed away yesterday.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear this.
Yeah. So,
Oh, man.
and I have a lot of memories with that because that's how I really met your father, was through Terry.
Mm-hmm.
Even though your father and I went from first grade through 12th grade together, we didn't become friends until we were like 14 or 15. And that's because I met Terry. And so, yeah, his daughter got in touch with me and I'm going to be talking to her. But I said to her, make sure that you call me because I have so many stories. Like, Terry was very funny.
Yeah, he was.
Like, he always
was.
always made me laugh. He always did something crazy and he was crazy. But I said, Rebecca, call me because I have so many wonderful, really great memories of your father making me laugh and the crazy things that we did. So I don't really, there's some things I don't remember. You know what I mean? Maybe I don't want to remember them. But no, I remember a lot of the stuff that we did, like, vividly, like it happened yesterday in some cases.
That's interesting. Yeah, I met Terry. I don't know if you remember this. Like maybe it was before I went to college, I think. And he came to Massachusetts and Dad was there. Do you remember this? Like we all had dinner at your place in Boston or in Framingham.
That I don't remember.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's really
what I
cool.
remember about this is that he told what I remember about it vividly and no Dad was there was because you were saying he was funny. And what he said was, you were talking about some woman and he was like, she could suck a golf ball through a garden hose. I'll never forget it, which is the first time I ever heard that. And Dad was like, ho, kind of like thing. Because Dad doesn't really tell dirty jokes like that or whatever. And I remember that.
I know who you're talking about too, but I'm not going to say anything.
I remember vividly. I remember that's like, so I was like, I know him in my mind. I don't know him at all, like personally, but that one time I was like, yeah, he's obviously a funny character.
Oh my God. He was
I don't know what
character.
that was all about. Like Dad must have come. It must have been like, I used to visit you when I lived in Long Island in high school for like for like the breaks, spring and winter break. And it must have been maybe during one of those times. Maybe Dad was there. He was in town visiting. Cause I remember the other thing I remember is he's a recovering alcoholic, right? And he would drink Old Duels.
He would drink Old Duels. Well, it was because he had liver disease.
Oh, okay. So I don't want to,
no.
I remember that too because I was like, "What the fuck is?" Oh, that's the other thing I remember about him. And he was saying like, "You want to drink some Old Duels?" Like making fun of me, me like thinking I'm going to get drunk off of Old Duels, and like it's really cool that he's giving me that. So that's another thing that I remember about that guy. That's too sad. That's sad. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
that
really,
sucks.
Really
that's
upset.
one of those connective tissue people in the family, and a name I've been hearing since I was so little because of the pivotal role he played in the family for like bridging the gap between you and Dad and bringing you guys together. And he was that key person, that key element. The other thing is, I would have loved that, Kyle, because those are the guys that could tell you stories.
Oh
that you've
man,
never heard
can
before,
they tell you stories
about your family, about your parents when they were young, the stuff like I always craved as a kid and still do, so that sucks. Was he still on Long Island, Mom, or was he somewhere else?
No, he lives in Indiana.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, he works for Indiana Bell. I don't know like specifically, but he was a lineman.
Okay.
In New York, and then he transferred to Indiana when he got married and had his kids. Yeah. Yeah,
that sucks.
Yeah.
He was your graduating class, right?
No, he was 2 years ahead.
Oh, 2 years ahead of you guys.
Yeah, but he went to Herrick's High School. And he just turned 75 on the 7th of December. I was pretty sure I was going to have you on his birthday. Dagan.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Because I had you at night and I was like, oh, wow, I wonder if, it's going to be 3 more hours. I was already in labor for 22. You know what I mean? But
right.
I had you before the midnight hour.
Do you?
Right.
You guys, Dig, I've probably said this before, Mom. I don't know if I've ever said this on a show you've listened to, but just for posterity's sake, because you had brought up like being the connective tissue between someone. I have a story like that with a very surprising person or a very surprising couple. Hunter Pence, the famous baseball player, met his wife through me. Because,
yes, that I know. Yeah.
Because
I don't think I know.
Yeah,
this.
because Hunter Pence played for the Giants at the time. He had a contract with Sony for MLB The Show where they would send like players around. So they pitched us on this at IGN, and sports coverage just doesn't do well at IGN. Like we had like Nate used to run IGN Sports and stuff like that. Like it's not. We really tried to get it off the ground. It's just not a big thing. Sports game coverage is just annualized. No one really cares. So, but Sony was like, it was basically like you kind of rubs their back so that they give you something later. So it's like, we really could use like this appearance, like can they appear and do an interview and all that kind of stuff. And I had to go and sell it to the video team. And they're like, we really don't want to do this with this guy. Like, no offense to him, he's famous, but this stuff doesn't perform. And so I twisted some arms and I'm like, it'll do great for us later if we can say we did this and we can come back for them for an exclusive or something later on. So they lamented, and lo and behold, Hunter Pence came in. The video coordinator was a woman that I worked with who was a friend of mine, Alexis, and I connected them because he wasn't there to see me. She was running the show there, and that's how they met. So if I didn't push for him to be on that, and I was like, yeah, you're right, we shouldn't do this, they would have never met.
That's pretty fun.
That's
and
crazy.
They acknowledged that, and they invited me to their wedding over that.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I couldn't go for some reason, but it was like I was like in Europe or something for Gamescom or something weird where I didn't end up going. But that was like the total acknowledgement. I barely knew Hunter Pence, and it was one of those weddings where you had to like put your phone in a safe, like you couldn't.
Oh yeah, they didn't want you taking pictures.
And apparently, so I was talking. I knew a lot of people that were there. They were like, dude, there were like so many famous baseball players and the entire team, all of these different famous people. Like, it was insane.
That's incredible.
You know, and I was like,
that
that's
would
too
have been
bad.
fun.
So that's like
Are they
my
still
one.
married,
That's
Kyle?
they're still married to this day. They
Okay.
make a bunch of content. Like he's a huge nerd, and that was another like, and so is Alexis. And so I haven't spoken to them in years, but I always thought that was weird. Like, that's the only example of that where someone, and I was like, that's so strange. I sent Hunter Pence's life on a certain trajectory.
That's pretty cool.
Right.
A monk with a million other butterfly effects in his life. It wasn't like just Colin Moriarty standing in between you and glory. I think he'd already won the World Series by then. Okay. Let's see. So Dig, you had asked what we were going to talk about, and I really have no plan. I already have a million things that Mom has opened up that I wanted to discuss. But Mom, I want to revisit something I've asked you in the past, which was, how does it feel to have like a chronology of some sort through a show like Knockback about our family and its lore? Not only us and you and everyone else, but there's like, I say to Dagan over and over again, it's kind of interesting. This is an unusual project where it's really about our own experiences through these different properties that we cover and through our different, through our different decades living. But it's also a chronology of the people that don't participate and have no choice. Like, I think of Dana specifically, because like our sister Dana, who is really a hard no about doing the podcast, which really annoys me, because I'm like,
Hard
why,
no.
dude? Like, why are you so timid about doing the podcast? You're the only thing standing in between us and all of us on it, like even
Yes.
potentially together.
Right.
But she's still a participant, just not willingly,
Right.
So
She
how does
can't
that feel to
defend
kind of
herself.
yeah, how does it feel to hear about yourself and kind of, do you think we're fair about our stories, our stories and our recollections of the past?
I think that you're fair. I think that it's funny a lot of the time. I just laugh, and it reminds me of things that I don't really think about very often. Yeah, I like it. I think it's something that we can look back on, that the kids can look back on, at some point and say, oh yeah, that's the story. This is a family that tells stories.
Yes.
We're good storytellers. I think we are. We like to tell them. I don't know how good we are, but we like to tell stories.
Depends on who we're talking about, I think.
Yeah. But I remember loving stories when I was a kid that my mom and dad used to tell me about, their families and growing up when they were kids. So I think it's the same thing. It's fun to listen to people's reminiscing about whatever it is that they're thinking about, because it might be something that you haven't thought about in ages. Like, my memories are probably not the same as your memories or Dagan's memories, right?
No, certainly not. Like, when Dagan was telling the story about, and I'm just using this as an example, not to make fun of you, but peeing on the rug at our aunt's house, he was like, I was there, and I don't remember that day at all, as if it never happened. But he remembers it, and that's the whole thing. If you kind of cross-reference all of these memories, you probably have a pretty good holistic chronology of what happened.
Yeah.
But there are entire times I don't remember, and there are also things I just remember where I'm like, I don't know the context of it, but I remember sitting Indian style at the corner of the kitchen into the living room with my Ninja Turtles tray, eating food every day, watching, G.I. Joe. But I don't remember like what the context of that was. That was just something I did. And those guys were playing with my blocks or doing those, but I don't remember having a harder time hanging on to specific memories. And not all the memories I remember, of course, are good. One of my oldest memories is Dad chasing me because I did something. Like,
those are a lot of my memories.
Yeah, where it's like our dad used to work these tours in New York City as a fireman and then come home, and I must have did something. And you told him, and then he like came in and like went, and I remember just running away. And that's like and that's like a memory. That's a specific memory. But I also remember Dad picking me up so I can touch the ceiling.
The ceiling,
I love touching the
he
ceiling.
would do that all the time.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember Dad, I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it anyway.
That's fine.
So Dagan didn't come home one night. He was probably 16 or something. He told me he was staying 16. At his friend's house. They were going to be skateboarding. I said, okay, I don't know this friend, so give me the phone number in case I need you. And he did. He gave me the phone number. But the next morning, I got a phone call from Wallbaum's because they wanted him to go into work. And I said to his boss, I don't remember your boss's name. But
Frank.
Okay.
Wallbaum's is a supermarket, by the way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I said, and he worked in the produce department. I said, Frank, let me call him. I have his number. Let me see if I can go and pick him up. You know, he's somewhere in Bayville or wherever you said you were. I don't remember. Sayville, maybe.
Yeah, Blue Point, Sayville,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. And I said, let me call him. And I called the number and it was a non-working number. So I knew that he wasn't at his friend's house and I didn't know where he was. And I was panic stricken. And your father came home from work. And he looked at me and he said, what's wrong? And I said, I don't know where Dagan is. And then there was a big ruckus. And he came home about 4:00 in the afternoon. Your dad was working outside. And I knew that dad was going to go after him. I knew it. And so he knew it too. So he was walking up the driveway, coming through the garage into the family room, like really fast. I was watching him and I was standing in the doorway from the kitchen to the family room. So your father was on his tail. He came into the family room and he went backwards around the entire family room with his back to the wall, went around the whole family room so he could see the two of us. So we weren't out of his sight. And your father was standing at the door in the garage. I was standing across from him at the door in the kitchen. And your father went to move. And I said, no, he's all mine. I'm going to take care of him. And that's when I punished you for 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a month. I remember that so vividly in my mind's eye still, Mom, because that was the one time I pulled a stunt like that, knowing there were going to be repercussions, but still not being able to resist. But the whole night having anxiety, like, this is not, you better enjoy this because it's not going to end well because you just straight up lied. You know what it was? There was an abandoned warehouse. I remember it was some weird pool supply warehouse outside of this industrial park, like sort of in between an industrial park and a residential neighborhood on the other side, like on the far side of Sayville, like Bohemia or Oakdale or something.
Mm-hmm.
And my friends from over there from Sayville basically set up all kinds of skate ramps inside. But the cool thing was it had heat, it had lights, it had offices with beds in it and stuff like that. So we used to just hang out there, but I was never allowed to do anything. So on, it was like on a Friday night, I was like, fuck it. I'm staying at, the place was called Loop Lock. I said, I'm staying at Loop Lock tonight. Just tell, it was me and Adam. You know, we were thick as thieves. One of my best friends.
It was Adam
Smith.
From the neighborhood. And then we said, you know what, we'll just say we're staying at Dino's house. Dino was a friend of ours from over there, but Mom and Dad didn't know Dino from a hole in the wall because he was kind of new on the scene. He had a single mom. I knew she was always working. She was never home. I may have even fed you a fake phone number. I'm not even sure.
Oh, yeah, you did.
But the whole time knowing like this is going to end badly, you know what I mean? Type of thing. And you guys did. That was the only time I really ever got grounded. You took my board away for a month. I remember the hiding spot after that 4 weeks when you dug it out. It was the only place I didn't look. It was like the most obvious spot. I was so angry. I was like, and my friends in the meantime, like set up a shitty skateboard for me that I could have. Whenever I could get out, but you guys held to that punishment, really like hard and fast. Like you made me see it through. People would come and try to pick me up.
Oh my God. Adam used to come like 40 times a day.
He's not going out.
Yeah. And he'd say, come on. I'd be like, Adam, you need to leave. He's not coming out. He has 2.5 more weeks or whatever it was. And he'd go, come on, and it'd be like, Adam, I'd shut the door.
No, you guys stuck to your gun.
Out.
And it was really the only time. You know what's so funny though, Mom, it's so funny that Colin has the same memories of Dad. I was actually really curious about this going into the conversation because I always think of those times when I was little, where I was younger, where, Dad was away a lot, 2 or 3 days at a time, sometimes working tours, working side jobs. So I guess when we pushed you too far, it was the phone call to Dad. And then it was like, the kids are, Dagan's driving me crazy. Here's what he did. But the funny thing is, I remember being mad as a kid, but honestly, in all fairness, 9 times out of 10, you probably didn't do that. It was only when we crossed that threshold of really driving you nuts or really misbehaving.
No, I always tried to protect you, actually.
Even as a kid, I remember thinking like, all right, what did I do to cross the line this time? Let's try to dial it back for the next one. Because then it was like living in fear for 36 hours till Dad got home. And you knew he wasn't going to forget, that type of thing. So if you mellowed out, sometimes in the interim, you might have stepped in between Dad when he finally got home and said, you know what,
I stepped in between.
It's okay,
a lot.
type of thing. But there were those times of, like, I remember, like Kyle was saying, of him chasing me around the house and stuff. And he was going to get me. It was only, it was only
there's no doubt that he was going to get you. Who's determined. So, yeah, I would have to jump in between sometimes. But
oh my God.
It was
so exciting memories, but a little scary. And then sometimes him getting home after I was in bed, which wasn't that hard to do because you guys sent me to bed at like 7:00 when I was 14 years old.
So weird.
And just knowing, like thinking in my head, like, okay, he just got home. He's probably tired. He knows I'm sleepy. He would still come in. There were those few times where he would come into my room where I was supposed to be asleep. Of course, I wasn't because I was fretting. I was under the covers thinking like he's going to beat the shit out of me type of thing. And he would come in and give me a smack, whether I was sleeping or not. Those two, that wasn't all the time, 3 or 4 times. But just thinking about you, like you would think I would be angry. But looking back retrospectively, I actually feel bad for you because we must have been driving you up a wall to such a degree that you felt like
I couldn't handle it
in
anymore.
those moments. You had to call Dad. Like you had to consult your husband on that, like, and check us.
I have
funny.
A great deal of patience, I think.
You were so patient.
Yeah, I'm so patient. So that you must have been absolutely driving me out of my mind. But you were really great kids. And, in retrospect, thinking back, you did go to sleep at 8:00 and at night. You went to sleep. It didn't matter if it was summer and it was still light out and the kids were all playing outside.
The younger kids.
Yeah. The kids
like
that
when
were
I was
2.
in middle school,
the
like
kids
the
that were
elementary school
2.
kids.
Yeah. But I would put you to bed because I was with you a lot by myself. I was the one that was in charge all the time by myself. And by 8:00 at night, I couldn't function anymore. You know what I mean? I had to not worry about all of you just for a night. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that makes sense. I never even really considered that perspective, that it's just like, we got to, you guys like punching out,
Yeah.
But you were really good too, because you would say things like you knew that at 7:00 the Muppets were on or whatever it was, right? And it was, I would call it quiet time. And you would say, Mom, it's quiet time. The Muppets are on. And I'd be like, all right, you'd all lay down with the pillows on the floor and you'd want covereds. You thought like blankets were called covereds. All right. And I would come and I'd cover you all up. And when it was over, you'd say, it's time for bed, Mom. Like, that's how good you were.
Yeah.
That's how good they were.
We were so stupid. Like, I don't know if I should say we. I shouldn't lump everybody in with me in this. But, Kyle and I have talked about this where I was so dumb. I didn't even think about not listening or pushing back. Or you guys were doing something right with the discipline because I didn't even think of defying anything you said. In retrospect, I'm like, oh my God, I should have just went outside and played. What were you guys going to do? Kill me? You were going to murder me. But I had the fear of God. I was just like, yes. It's my friend's younger brother outside playing. It was like my friend Matt's brother, Paulie. Like he was in 3rd grade when I was in like 7th grade.
Oh, stop. I didn't send you to
He's like, why is he still playing outside? It's not, hearing
it and outside,
it was so painful.
Yeah.
But I didn't even think like, as an adult, you think, all right, what would have happened if I just went out and played manhunt with the kids? Mom and Dad might have been mad, but they weren't gonna maim me. They weren't gonna take me and drag me into the street and shoot me. But for some reason, we just
you were really
stayed in line. Yeah, didn't even think of it.
I remember Colin when we lived in Brookhaven. You guys were all in school. Colin was home with me. Ann and Ed, lived next door, and they were flight crew members, so they weren't there all the time, right? But Colin knew that they had a computer in the house. We didn't have one at the time. And I would be like, he'd say, he'd point over there. He was really little. He'd point and he pointed for a long time because he didn't need to speak because we knew exactly what he wanted by him going, eh. And so you were probably just 2 years old and you wanted to go over there. And I'd say, why do you want to go over? And you'd say, I want to use, Mommy, the computer. And I'd be like, the computer. So one day I couldn't find him. He walked out of the house. He walked through the garage door. He went over to Ann and Ed's. I was frantic because, we lived right across from the river. So I'm yelling, Colin, Colin. And I run up to Anne's door and I'm knocking on the door and she goes, he's here. He's on the computer.
Yeah,
so he always loved computers.
It's an early sign.
Yeah, it was like a foreshadowing. It really was.
It is an early sign. And what's funny was I was never into the technical aspects of the computer ever. I was always just interested in what it can help me do, like, and give me connections to. So I do remember that. I was obsessed with like the Apple II and those old computers that we would play with in the elementary school and and all that. It's funny though. I would consider some of the things I consider myself generally my entire childhood a good kid.
Like you were all good kids.
A decent kid. But I think in high school I did a couple of truly bad things. But that was my high school period. And we talked about those and I'll go into those if we want. But when I was a kid, it's funny it's like, what did you do wrong? And like, I was like, I don't really know. Like
I'm going to cough.
One thing I remember doing is my friend Tim down the street had some connection. He was a year older than me. I was probably in second grade and he was in third grade or something. And he had like some connection to a cousin or something that was giving him all of these G.I. Joes and then he would sell them to me. So I got a bunch of these G.I. Joes secondhand from him. And Dad at some point was like, shut that down. And was like, you can't do this anymore. Like you're spending all of your money like that you earn like in your allowance or whatever on this stuff. And then I just did it anyway. And then Dad, and I thought I would just get away with it because and I think it's somewhat reasonable to be like, how the hell is he going to know? Like in my mind, I'm like, he's going to know I didn't have this vehicle and these two figures. Like he will never know. And then lo and behold, he just walked into my room, looked at the shelf. And he's like, where did these come from? And I was like, all right, I guess like you got me. And that was the only time I ever really remember until high school getting in trouble. I don't think I really did anything. You know, I wasn't
really
like
good.
Yeah, I don't know. It was like, I wasn't like, I was just well behaved, I think.
You were
and I was naive as hell too. I was so naive about the world until I grew up late, I think, in a lot of ways.
But isn't it nice to grow up naive and happy? Then
I think it was serendipitous considering the events that were going on at that time. Like I think I was in a perfect pocket of age where it kind of just worked, you know, in the moment. And then you can deal with the drama later, but you got through the moment. And I think that was a lot of that had to do with that. So there's no doubt that I benefited a great deal from growing up. And I think a lot of it was because I was the youngest too. I just think a lot of that is by virtue of that. I was probably, I don't think I was baby, but I'm like a super mama's boy. I talk about that all the time.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
you are.
And
but I love that you're a mama's boy.
I just, when I tell people I'm the youngest, it's like I have cousins, a couple of cousins that are younger than me. But in terms of like the people that were around me, like even when you think about my friend Tim, he was older than me. The neighbor across the street, Brian, he was older than me. Tim's brothers, older than me. All my siblings, older than me. And I was young compared to a lot of my schoolmates. You know, like I graduated college. You know, I was in 12th grade at 16. Yeah. So I think a lot of that too is just like a naivete built out of just being nowhere near the authority on anything in any part of your life.
Yeah, that may play into it a little. I mean, you know, being good kids too, and I know the four of us were like well-behaved children and all that. You realize when you're a parent also that it's a little bit of luck of the draw. Like I remember even being a young dad in my mid-30s to late 30s thinking like, okay, how is this going to play out with my kids as they get older? And I have very well-behaved kids. And my nieces and nephews are all good kids too. You know, but it's the type of thing where you realize there are other adults that I know in my life, whether it's friends or family or people that I met along the way that are awesome people, but various people that I know got into such mischief as kids and were kind of bad kids, whether they were really young or juvenile delinquents, or they got into all kinds of shit with, you know, and serious things in their teens with DUIs and stuff. It's like, wow, it's a little, I guess there's a lot of being a product of your environment. So that plays a part and, you know, outside influence, but it's all kind of like, it's this weird alchemy of just kind of luck, right? And just, you know, you could even grow into a responsible adult, a good human being. But, you know, for some reason, the four of us, you know, the four Sibs, we just dodged a lot of bullets with that, especially growing up in an area where it was nice. You know, we lived in a very bucolic area in Brookhaven, for instance, and stuff, but it was very diverse, you know, with, you know, what nationality, racially, socioeconomically. Like, we could have got into a lot of mischief. You know what I mean? There was definitely hijinks to be had growing up in our pocket of Long Island. You know what I mean? You could have gone a million different ways. But for some reason, I don't know if we had outside interests that engaged us, distractions that were good, good distractions, whatever it was, track and soccer for the girls and music and the computer and hockey for Colin or skateboarding for me. But it is interesting. It really, having kids really puts it into context too. And I almost feel like with my kids, I honestly thought like, okay, they're going to challenge you. You know what I mean? Like, you grew up a good kid. You have a very limited perspective because you never really dabbled in drugs or alcohol or stealing cars or graffiti or any of these other things that you could have got up to, no good. Who knows what's going to happen with your kids, even though you're asserting your influence, but who knows, so I feel like I dodged a bullet twice, which is interesting, and especially with the other kids around me, the kids that I'm closest with, my nieces and nephews, like I said, on both sides of the family, it's just like the same thing. It's like, wow, we really kind of got lucky a couple of different times. I feel like, which is interesting.
Yeah. In high school, I did some bad things that I'm not proud of. And I've talked about those things. Like it was totally degenerate behavior and nothing super crazy, but, smashing people's mailboxes and drinking and smoking with your friends and, definitely drinking and smoking while you're driving around and, getting into fights. And I did well.
That's all the normal stuff.
I guess it is. It's like, I did well in high school. I did well. Like,
right.
And I grew up late. Like when I entered 9th grade, I've said it before. I was wearing like Darth Maul t-shirts and reading fantasy novels and collecting Star Wars figures and doing all of this and super into video games, of course. And by the time I graduated, I was kind of had been in I was never part of the cool clique ever, but I don't want to say allowed. It's like they were nice to me for some reason. And I often think a lot of it has to do with Allie and like, which is my older sister and one of your younger sisters, obviously. And her kind of setting a tenor for me with some of her friends, little siblings and all of that, who happened to be cool. Cause Allie was cool,
Right.
Like Allie
told me that she told a lot of people to protect you.
Yeah. And like it was kind of interesting. Like I remember, her best friend Janine's older brother drove like a Camaro, and he was a senior when I was a freshman, and I used to walk to school because they lived down the street from me, and he used to drive me to school all the time. And it's like, that's pretty cool. Like when you need like some sort of person to have you in the pocket or whatever of acceptability in a social caste system like that is difficult to breach. But by the time I'd left, I had kind of become different. And I think part of that it was like reconciling the two sides of me. I always had kind of a crazy side of me that never really came out in some sense. And I think a lot of it came out in hockey, to be honest. And Mom knows more than anyone, is like, I used to like rack up penalty minutes as a goalie, which was no one really did. Like goalies have incidental penalties sometimes, like slashing or something. But I was kicked out of games for fighting and being stupid. And I'm not proud of it at all. It's just like, it was a totally different persona. I think a lot of it was I was inspired by Ron Hextall and fucking, I don't know, Mike Howard and all these random goalies that were fighting each other at center ice in the 90s. Mom will remember more than anyone. Like these guys used to literally meet in the Red Wings Avalanche playoff series 3-3, and there'd be a fucking melee, and the goalies would literally fight each other. And it's like, so I felt like I felt like I kind of had this super nerdy passive side, and then sort of like this urge to get out this energy, and I would get it out on the ice. But I think I don't know that I even met the wrong people. I just think we were all kind of self-enforcing and reinforcing all these things that I think we thought we were supposed to do. And some of it was like fun.
Peer pressure.
Yeah. And some of it's funny. Like I look back on it, it's not funny to get your mailbox smashed. It's not.
But that taught you a great lesson.
Yeah, it did. It was scary as hell. But I think about it, it's like, wow, you really did use a propane tank to destroy people's mailboxes. That's pretty interesting. Part. But and you figured out that you could just, if you go drive fast enough and you just hold it, it'll just hold itself up, but it's, you look back at that and it's like, I remember that I explained it because Dad was there. I got in trouble and And I was ashamed. I was like mega ashamed of it. And Dad knew, but it was the only time that I think I was like, I knew Dad was like, what the fuck did you just do? Kind of thing, you know? Because there were times where I got beat up or got my friends. I was friends with a lot of like hothead dudes that would, you know, fight their fucking rivals and do all these things. And I'd just get dragged into I'd just be around and then get the shit kicked out of me or whatever. I didn't want to fight anyone. I mean, I was like scrawny as shit, but you just get dragged into all these things. So I think there were a couple year period. That was probably like a 11th, 12th grade where I was probably at my quote unquote worst, but what's just funny is that I was like an honor student and wasn't really doing anything. And I was working and stuff. I wasn't doing anything mega wrong. I think I was always desperate to belong to. I've realized that as I've gotten older that like I've always just needed to belong and like never felt like I belonged anywhere. And I think getting to IGN was the first time that I felt like I actually belonged
Peer pressure
somewhere.
is really something in high school.
Yeah, and just just the inability to be somewhere with real roots, right? And because of moving around and living with you and living with Dad, it's like I think that I took with that like I can never have that kind of experience. So you want to do what you need to do to ingratiate yourself. You almost want to like skip the line and be like, I'll do what's necessary to be down as if I was here for all of this time, you know? And, and so, yeah, that's something I kind of shook off in college, I think.
Yeah.
Mom, I don't know if you feel this way, but Colin said something that I think about a lot and grew up thinking about a lot, being the oldest, and you were the oldest too, Mom. Like, really, I love hearing the stories about how Allie kind of pulled her weight as the big sis and Colin reaped the benefits of having the older sibling. You know what I mean? So it's like protection and in Colin's case, like friendships with people that were a lot older that maybe wouldn't have happened. And even transportation, like you were really reaping the benefits, right? But I always wanted that. Like I always daydreamed of having the big sister for certain reasons or having the big brother to, you know, somebody like for physical protection, the big sister for like emotional guidance and sort of that whole thing of, you know, showing you the ropes, you know, somebody to be under their wing. But I never had that being the oldest.
Right.
You know, a lot of people would argue that Dana's the oldest. She's not. She's a year and a half younger than me. She often acted the most mature. Even to this day. She was a girl.
There's a difference, you know.
But did you have the same thing, Mom, growing up where you kind of always daydreamed about having that thing that you were never going to have?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Don't forget, I was an only child for 10 years.
Yeah. Right.
And then my mother had twin girls, which I was thrilled about, actually. You know, I was really happy because we grew up on a block that had like 9 kids in a family, 7 kids in a family, 6 kids in a family. There was only one other family that had 1 kid. And she was a little bit younger than me. She was a little bit obnoxious, so we didn't really get along. I was, you know, I really was a tomboy a little bit. I liked my dolls, but I really liked to be in the trees and building tree houses and stuff. And she was just like completely different than me. But I used to beg my parents to adopt an older brother for me. That's true. I would be like, Mom, why don't we adopt an older brother? And she would be like, don't be ridiculous, you know, like for 10 years. And then she had the twins.
I like that. You were scheming, though. You were thinking about how can we make this happen?
I wanted someone to protect me. It was the same thing that you're saying. I wanted just someone that would protect me. But I think, you know, we'll get into this at a different time. Oh, Micah put the light on.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Micah.
Thank you.
I texted her because I was like, we're losing Mom.
All right. I was like,
we're losing Mom.
Micah's here.
Losing the light.
We're losing light. What was I saying? I wanted someone to protect me, but I think what helped me be the person that I am, and I still am, so I take a lot of chances and stuff, is when I got sick when I was a kid. And we'll talk about that another time because that would take a very long time to tell people about. But I think that being so sick actually helped me to not focus on the things I couldn't control and to really push through things. I'm very stoic because of it. So although I wanted, you know, a sibling so badly, and if I could get a bigger brother now, I'd even take it, you know? But
it's that thing that you want, but you'll never have. I can relate.
You'll never have it.
You'll never have it.
Right. But you know, this is funny because I just talked about this with someone yesterday. you think about things that you want really badly that you know you're never going to get, right? And you know it, but you accept it and you wish for it. Like with the Corvette last year, right? 50 years I asked for a Corvette. Honest to God, I used to go with you. I don't know if you remember. I would go with you to see Santa Claus. I'd say to Santa, how about the candy apple red Corvette in the driveway? And he'd say, were you good? I'd say I was very good. The next year I'd say, it wasn't there, Santa. He'd say, I guess you weren't good enough. We did that for like 50 years. But so I think that there can be things that you wish for, but not like siblings. There comes a point where you can't have that anymore.
Right.
Right. So, I like being a big sister. I don't think that they like me being a big sister.
Oh, I think you're such a, I thought about this recently, Mom, which I never acknowledged, but I must have always known, at least in the back of my head, like, being the oldest, I think I modeled a lot of my behavior off of watching you with my aunts, with being the big sister to Aunt Joni and Aunt Carla, and the way you kind of exerted your influence in a diplomatic way. I mean, your diplomacy definitely washed off on me. That's one of the great things about you, I think.
Thank you.
But also your intelligence, your leadership. Like I must have been I was definitely watching you with them my entire life. And a lot of that must have washed off by, via osmosis, and I think I love my aunts. And I'm very close to one of my Aunt Joni's one of my best friends.
Right.
I know they appreciate you as a big sister. Like they would have it no other way.
Well, I think they do. They just like to bust chops. That's what they like to do. Yeah. And, they're very close to each other because they have that twin bond.
Right.
And we were never friends growing up because I was so much older than them, the way you were older than Colin.
Yeah, same thing.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So you understand that, I would play with them and tease them, and my friends would come over and tease them, and they still talk about that, But we didn't have a relationship really until actually I was pregnant with you, because they were so excited about having another kid. So they're the same age difference as we are. Do you know what I mean? You're 12 years younger than them, and they're 10 years younger
Yeah, that's
than
an
me.
interesting way to think about it.
Yeah,
that is true.
You're right in the middle.
Yeah. They were young enough to be the very cool aunts. And of course, their, Uncle Mike was a big part of that. And then Uncle Tommy, and then eventually Uncle John. There was that dynamic where, I always felt it's interesting to know that you didn't feel close to Aunt Joni and Aunt Carla as a kid, but that does make sense because they were so little until they got old enough to be, feel like there could be some modicum of friendship. But I always felt that was really liberating with me and Colin, for instance, because you're free of the shackles. There's that age difference in there, that buffer where you're not beholden to the sibling rivalry. I even felt that with Allie. It was like 5 years was enough for me and Allie to always be very close because we were free of the sibling rivalry. There was none of that. There was enough cushion in the ages, so there is something really cool about that, but that's a huge age difference for you and my aunts, where it's like,
it was
they
very
were kids.
big, but you know what? So we couldn't be friends because we had nothing in common really.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But I loved them, and I loved like hanging out with them and teasing them and taking them on a walk or whatever it was that I did with them. Aunt Joni talks about when I was on, I was on the swim team when I was a kid at the pool, and I'd be coming home from the pool. I'd walk through the schoolyard that was up the block, and they'd always be on the swings, and I would just run behind them. I would see them and I'd run behind them and push. You know what I mean? Like when you run and you just push someone and they go flying, In retrospect, they could have fallen and killed themselves because they weren't expecting it. You know what I mean? But they would laugh. They would laugh like, no, they were like 3 or 4. You know what I mean? I was always at the pool with my friends. So they would laugh and they'd say, do it again, and I would just play with them like that. But we weren't playing together.
Right.
You know what I mean? We weren't
right.
like playing house together or dolls or G.I. Joes or whatever, like because Aunt Joni was into G.I. Joes.
Right.
Yeah, so we weren't.
No, they
doing
idolized. They
that.
grew. You were old enough where they grew up with a built-in idol. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
you were
that's
old
cute.
enough to be their idol, right? And yeah, I mean, I'm sure like whatever they kind of embraced as people and their personalities and stuff was largely formed by having you there as a role model, right?
Yeah,
In a lot of ways.
I never looked at it like that, but maybe,
Sure,
yeah.
no, that's gotta be a thing. You know, it's funny, like as a parent, I mean, Helene and I closed the door and turned the page on having another kid, 5-10 years ago. And I don't do good with finality, right? In life, like thinking like, okay, that's never going to happen. Like that's a tragic thing for me. I don't know. I just get sad about that, whatever it is. But, we know we're not going to have a third kid, but you know what makes me sad about it? Graydon would be such a good older brother. He would be the best older brother. Like he has to be the youngest of two. That's just the way it's going to be. But that's the sad thing about sunsetting that idea is like, oh, Graydon would be a great big bro. He really would be. But, Helene always says when I say that, she's like, you know what? He's going to be a dad though. It's going to be, he's going to be able to be that thing.
Yeah.
And he'll also be an uncle in all likelihood. So.
And he also has, little cousins like Tommy is.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he can be good to Tommy.
Tommy and Helena. But that's the thing that draws it out. It's like, wow, look how good he is with kids, which is kind of a rare thing. It's not impossible, but that's not a thing you often see in boys, is like being very good with the little ones at Graydon's age, because Graydon's 13 years old. Yeah,
but you were good with the little ones.
Yeah.
So
I enjoyed being with the kids. It was an excuse for me to be younger. It was like, I'm too old to play with the toys, but I could sit down, and play with the toys with the three. And now I have an excuse,
right.
That type of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear experiences from inherently like the older people in a sequence, right? Because there are advantages and disadvantages to being the youngest in a sequence of siblings too. But I will say the thing that a lot of people don't think about is, and this is true, and I think that this is just something that's built in with a lot of different people, and it's kind of changed maybe in the last few years for me, is that no one really cares about, like, I don't want to say about what you think or whatever, but like you're kind of like, oh, it's Colin, or Colin always needs advice, or Colin's always young and unable to do things or whatever. And then you just get that kind of vibe where you're just the youngest, like you're just the toddler. Everyone's already done everything. Everyone has already thought of everything. Everyone's already said everything. And there's some disadvantage to that is very annoying and makes you feel like you want to like really go above and beyond to like break out. I can totally feel that as a young sibling.
That's interesting.
Like you're under everyone else's shadow, and everyone else is you graduated.
Yeah, they
from
still
high
want to
school
tell
first.
you what to do.
Right.
Yeah, they still want to tell you what to do.
You know what though, Kyle? I feel like, and I don't know if you intended this, Kyle, for coming out in 1984, but if you did, it was a brilliant move, because I feel like you were far enough along. Like the three of us were here in the 70s. You came along in 84. And it was enough time where I feel like everybody in your life was ready to do it again. It's like, I'm ready to have a little kid again. I'm ready to have a baby again, a toddler.
Oh, so exciting.
Thing. It was like,
oh my God,
it was a
so
refresh
exciting.
for the family. I really remember it being the most exciting thing that happened to me as a kid.
Oh, you
if
were
I'm
all
thinking
thrilled.
about from being 0 to 20 years old, that was the most exciting event, was having like, when you think life is just good, and it wasn't bad. I loved mom and dad. I loved the girls, but it was just like that spark and excitement of having something like the dynamic was going to shift so dramatically. You don't expect that as a 10-year-old. You think, all right, this is the way it's going to be. It's smooth sailing or whatever kind of sailing you think it is from here on out. This was like I remember everybody, like the general vibe was just excitement, from everybody. And it was like, it was enough time that passed where it was like, oh, we're going back to do this all over again. Wow. Okay, cool. That type of thing. And the fact, I don't mean to say it like this, because I love girls and my daughter is like my princess, but I wonder if it would have been different if you were a girl. It definitely would have been for me.
I think about that.
Again, like this is crazy. Like we're three, we're 0 for 3.
Yeah,
that type of thing.
Yeah, that's well, it's like Dana and Derek with 3 boys, where they never got any sort of reprieve in some sense. Yeah, I think about that too. Mom, what was the vibe? Did people think I was going to be a boy or a girl?
I thought you were going to be a boy, because of the way I carried you and my hair stayed curly.
It's so interesting that the womanly intuition stuff. I love that.
Yeah. So I thought you were going to be a boy, but we never knew what we were going to have. But I carried you the same way I carried Dagan, very all in the front,
Yeah.
Yeah. When I had the girls, my hair got straighter. It was very weird, and I carried much more round. But I gained 32 pounds with each of you. I only weighed 100 pounds when I got pregnant. So I gained 32 pounds with each of you. But with you, Colin, I gained 28 pounds. But you were the second biggest baby.
Yeah, Allie was the biggest, right?
Yeah, she was 8'9". You were 8'4". Dana was 8 pounds, and Dagan was 6'4".
Oh, wow. I didn't realize I was so lit. Okay. I never knew all that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
cool. We're all really big. But, I was so thrilled to be having a baby. When I found out, that I was actually pregnant, my mother, so grandma kept saying every time I had a kid, you have a perfect family.
I was telling Aline this the other night.
Yeah. So she would say, you have a perfect family. I'd say, I have one kid. You know what I mean? She'd say after Dana, she was like, you have a perfect family. And I had Allie, you have a perfect family. Well, there was such an age gap, but, Colin was the only one we really talked about having. So, your father and I knew that was going to be a possibility, but nobody else did. But I got so excited that I didn't want to tell her, because she was going to tell me, why are you doing that? You have a perfect family, So I called Grandpa at work and I told him, and he was like, that's marvelous. That's wonderful. I'm so excited. What'd your mother say? And I said, oh, I'm not telling her. You're going to have to tell her. And he was like, why? I said, because I don't want to hear, Dad, that I have a perfect family. Now, and then she called me like 3 minutes later and started yelling at me. Why wouldn't you tell me that, But I know now in retrospect that it wasn't that she didn't want me to have more babies. She was afraid something was going to happen to me in childbirth because I had been so sick.
Right.
So that was the thing. She was just like, she's going to do this again. Now I have to worry about her through 9 months, and
it's so sweet and so
through
sad.
A childbirth. It is.
It's really it's the burden of being a parent.
Yeah, she never said that to me, but I know now that that's what she was worried about.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, she was just, because she was so excited.
That was her way of telling you without telling you.
Well, she wasn't really telling me. Like I kept saying, why is she that way? But I didn't think about this until very recently.
Yeah.
That, you know what? She didn't want me, because she would say to me all the time, and I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just being honest with what she would say. She would say, I never could do what you do. Stay home with 4 kids, 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids. She said, I could never do it. I always had to work, And if it wasn't for your grandparents, your great grandparents, she said, I never would have been able to do it. It's like really hard being a mother, and you're really good. Like you do everything with them.
Yeah.
And I really think I did do that.
Oh my God.
So I just
spoiled us rotten.
But looking back, those were the best years of my life, was having the kids and being with them. And even when Colin, we were going through so much then, but even with Colin being up there in Maine with me, I loved going to the arena with him and watching his little happy face on the ice. And
oh man, I loved hockey. I love hockey. I still love hockey. But
I do too. I love it. And it's because of you playing that I love it.
Yeah,
I never missed a game. I never missed his games. Forget about it. I never would miss all of his practices. He was like the Zamboni kid. He would go and ride the Zamboni on Sundays or whenever. I can't think of his name, Carl. What was it?
He was like a heavier set guy. I can't
yes,
John or something.
I can
like that.
see him.
Yeah. Yeah, he was like the pro shop guy.
Yeah. And then Jesse that worked
at Philbricks.
In Philbricks.
I wonder if that place is still there. Yeah, in Dover. New
Oh, I'm
Hampshire.
sure it's still there.
Yeah, that was like a
it was
hockey
right across
superstore.
from the arena.
That was like my Toys R Us, man. I love that. I would just go
But
right
he would know.
right into the basement
Yeah.
where the goalie equipment was. Like,
He would know exactly what I was. He'd say, "What do you need for him?" And I would tell him, and he'd say, "All right, he plays left-handed this way, and he plays right-handed this way. You know, we'll get this, and we'll get."
yeah,
like,
I play
he knew
goalie
everything
right-handed,
about you.
and I play
Yeah.
regular out left-handed.
Yeah,
it was cute. It's funny. I still have. I was telling Micah, I don't really. I want to be more intentional by using Instagram more. I'm just not a very visual person, really. Like, I don't. But the stuff I really love looking on there, there's a community of hockey goalie enthusiasts,
Oh, that's awesome.
and
that's cool.
people that are into sounds crazy because I don't think there are really many other sports like this where it's like, oh, what is the football player wearing? Like, what kind of equipment do you wear? I'm sure people have their preferences and good brands and stuff, but in the world of goaltending, what you wear and what you look like is a huge part of it. And I loved goalie equipment when I was a kid. I fucking loved it. I would go down into that place and try on every blocker and every glove and play with all the sticks and just fantasize about having like the most custom made stuff. And I remember thinking I was going to go to to St. Thomas in Dover, New Hampshire. I got in actually for high school, but I just ended up not going. We started buying black and blue equipment that spring before in preparation because you want to match your team and all of that. And so to this day, when I'm on Instagram, that's pretty much all I look at is goal. There's a account called like Every Goalie Ever or something like that, and it's just constant pictures of just goalies and their equipment. And I was explaining to Micah as we watch the various games, because she loves the Bruins. That's like her favorite thing. And I've been watching most of the Islanders games this year, really making the time for it. And I look at the different goalies and I was pointing things out to her that she probably doesn't give a shit about, but I'm like, you can tell that this goalie cleans his equipment and like rubs the puck marks off of it and stuff. And, you know, Ilya Sorokin on the Islanders goalie, like you can see his equipment's completely dirty because he wants to collect the puck marks. And I'm like, that was the way I was.
That was what you did. Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite goalie of all time, as people know, is Artis Urbe, who was an amazing goalie for the Sharks. And he played later for the Hurricanes. And I think he played for the Canucks for a little while, the Stars, but he never changed equipment. He used the same gear for his entire career. And it looked ridiculous. And like, it was ancient and beat up, and people can go look this up. Like, he used such unique and old equipment, like stuff from Europe and this like Soviet stuff from the 70s, that when he played for the Hurricanes, they would put ads in like the Hockey News to be like, does anyone have like a cage for a Jofa 1973 Soviet Union helmet, because we need it. And that's how they would get equipment for him, because like he insisted on using the shit from when he was a kid.
Right.
And I love that. And I totally connected with that. So when people ask me who my favorite hockey player of all time is, I'm like, that dude, he looks like, they used to call him the Michelin Man because he looked like he had just all this white equipment and it was just disgusting, you know? And so I always think about that stuff when I think about that era.
I remember him really well.
Phil Brooks, man.
Phil Brooks.
And so, yeah, that's like a thing that's definitely from that era of just obsessing on my hockey. I remembered Mom getting my first hockey equipment. Those are things I do remember. I remember getting my pair of Vaughn pads from Hutley. So there's a character,
and they wouldn't even take money for them.
Yeah, there was a character in my life for a few years that doesn't really come up. His name was Hutley, and he was an amazing goaltender. And when I played when I started playing hockey in elementary school, I was a defenseman, and I was on this Dover travel team as a defenseman, and our goalie was Hutley. Now, Hutley had a fantasy, and so did I. Now, don't get gross, not getting gross. His fantasy was he always wanted to play defense, but never was able to. My fantasy was I always wanted to play goalie, but I never got to. So, and we were really good, like a really good team. So when we would play teams that we didn't take seriously, I would play goal and he would play defense. And when we would play hard teams, I would play defense and he would play goal.
Yeah, and you just switch equipment.
Yeah, we would switch back and forth. He would wear my gear, I'd wear his gear.
Oh, interesting.
And we ended up developing a rapport with him and his father. And what were they? They were Vietnamese, I guess. They were like off the boat. Like off the, like
they were wonderful.
Literally he probably like got a job here, never exposed to hockey at all. His kid ends up falling in love with hockey. There's this little Vietnamese kid or whatever.
That's fantastic.
And becomes this amazing goalie. So it's because of this guy Hutley that I became a goalie, and he remained a goalie too. He was excellent. but he was like,
good.
he was an incredible goalie. And I remember years later seeing him play and being like, holy shit, you know, in high school or whatever, or like, you know, in middle school, you know, years later, he's on a different team. And I'm like, holy shit, that's Hut Lee. And he's playing at the highest level and just doing great things. And he was the reason that I became a goalie. And his dad, so Hut Lee was growing like a weed.
Yeah, he was.
And his dad sold us his goalie pads. Now, for people out there that don't know, goalie equipment is really expensive, like really expensive. Most of it comes from Canada or Europe. A lot of it is hand stitched and handmade. There are budget brands and stuff, but you don't really want to fuck around with that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's protected.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so he sold me, it was a pair of Vaughn black and white pads and Pro Flex, or I think that was the brand. And then Mom brought me to Philbricks, which was that hockey superstore, and I got my first blocker and my first glove. And there was a goalie in the 90s, people might remember Curtis Joseph, Cujo. And
I remember.
He wore Louisville. There are a bunch of different brands. I ended up with Brian's, ended up being the pads that I really loved, but there are a bunch of different brands, Bauer and back in the day Brown and whatever. And so one of the brands was Louisville. Like the Louisville was making goalie equipment, and they sponsored Cujo. So he had all this Louisville equipment, and I saw it in the store, and I was like, that's what I want. It was, the blocker had like an L on it with like a little red half of a maple leaf, because it's Canadian, I guess. And then the glove had the little L on it and it was all black, and it was like suede. Remember that, Mom? Like the blocker, and it was pretty cool. And
yeah, because the pads were white.
Right.
So yeah, so it looks good.
And then I wore like just a regular out player helmet with a little dangler on it. And for people that are into hockey, it kind of like what Kelly Hrudey used to wear. If you know your old goalies. And then I finally got my own goalie helmet, which I remember being such because that's like a rite of passage for every young goalie, is getting his own helmet, like his own. And then you get it painted later and all that kind of stuff, but just getting it. And I was like, holy shit, I have a goalie helmet. Like I have a goalie helmet. You feel like you really made it.
It was the best.
It was just so exciting. It was matte black. And then we ended up putting things on it and stuff. So,
yeah, it was awesome.
And it had the cool little dangler on it, you know, like the old 90s goalie.
Yeah, you're telling me. Yeah, I remember Mr. Lee wanted to give me the pads, and I was like, no, I can't take these pads because they're like $1,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah, at that size. I mean, there's several thousand added for an adult, you know.
Yeah. Wow. So he was like, no, I don't want any money. And I said, please, you've got to take something. And he said, all right, give me $50. I remember that. And I went to the bank and I got a $50 bill, and I even handed it to him. And he said, I don't even want to take this. And I said, please take it because I feel awful. You know what I mean? If you don't take it. And then when you outgrew them, we gave them to somebody.
We gave him I think Steve Belisle was the one that
maybe Steven. Yeah.
And he was another goalie I played with who was excellent. Steve Belisle, I think, I haven't talked to him in years, but he was a great kid and his mom was great.
They were awesome.
And I think he played Hockey East or somewhere in NCAA Division I. I think.
I'm sure he did.
He was we were the goalie tandem on a couple of teams, and I was always like, you're so much better than me. Like we all know that you're better than me, you know? Like I would start all the games and he would come in and play the second half of all the games and like clean up in like garbage time, you know, like when it was, or not garbage time, and that would be a football tournament. And the hardcore, like the game's tied. We need I used to get so nervous before games that they would want to get me out first. That was the whole idea, I used to get so nervous. They would just be like, Colin's got to play first. Start every game. They made me start every game.
Yeah, it's a good strategy though. Right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
And his mother was she was a single parent too. So we used to go to all the games together, and then we'd get yelled at because we had the two goalies in the one car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They ended up having to split us up. Yeah.
Right. If we didn't get there, they wouldn't have a goalie. They'd say, you can't come together.
Oh, right, yeah.
And we'd be like, no, that's the way we do it. Yeah. We travel together all the time.
That's dangerous. It's like the whole sports team flying on one plane.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there were close calls. I remember getting to a game in Concord in New Hampshire once, and like the Zamboni was on the ice. And that's like when you're about to go on. And I was like, oh shit, like getting all your gear on and no one knowing if you're going to show up. And like, if you're kind of... I mean, all the way up to men's league, goalies are kind of unique. Like men's leagues around the country, beer leagues need goalies constantly. Like people just don't play goalie very much. And
oh my God,
I think it's such a wonderful position.
Yeah, you won't remember this, Colin, but I had you and Stephen in the car with all the the goalie equipment, in the trunk. And they said we were going somewhere like to Berlin or something up in New Hampshire. And I didn't know how to get to Berlin, So they said, just follow us. And I said, okay. So I started following, and I didn't make the turn onto the highway. I just kept going straight, and Mr. Lee was behind me. And I think it was Mr. Lee. He came up like beeping the horn. He's telling me, turn around. And then I followed him up because I didn't know where I was going. And they would be like, you scared the hell out of us when you didn't get on the highway, because they were watching me. And, I had the two goalies in the car. They were like, where is she going? Is she going to a different game?
Yeah, that would be bad news for them. It's
because we traveled a lot.
Yeah, we did. I've brought that up on the show many times, and I took a lot of that for granted. That was just kind of an escape in what we did. Like, we went all over the goddamn place, like everywhere in New England, everywhere. And it was...
And Mr. Belisle, Stephen's grandpa, was really awesome.
Yeah, his grandfather. Too. That's right.
His grandfather was awesome.
That's right.
He would... Like, we'd go up to somewhere in Massachusetts or something, and I'd have the kids in the car, and he'd meet me up there, and he'd say, do you have gas to get home, Mr. Belisle? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm okay. He'd say, no, go to the gas station. I'm going to put $5 of gas in your car. Like, he would worry about me.
Wow.
Like, so sweet.
That's
and I'd be
cool.
like, I don't need the money. I have gas. But he would follow me to the gas station, make sure I got the gas. So cute.
I like the way you guys were able to pay it forward on those $50 goalie pads too.
Yeah,
definitely.
Because Maria had no money like I did.
Yeah, that's so neat that you were able to pass on.
She said, I'll pay you. And I was like, no, just take them. It's fine.
Yeah, it's expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was like shorter, littler than me.
Yeah,
I was when goalies were still little.
You.
Goalies are not little anymore for some reason. But, yeah, lots of fond memories of that era.
Yeah,
but Mom, I had a few questions I was writing down as we've been talking. I want a few things I wanted to run by you and ask you. I haven't even brought this up to Dagan, I don't think, but I was wondering, you're the perfect person to ask this about. And I've had this conversation with, I think, Dad and certainly my wife, which is that when do we stop saying that we're Italian and Irish and just say we're American? Have you thought about that at all recently? It's not even a joke. Like,
no, I understand. I understand what you're saying.
I look around the United States right now, and I think part of the problem is that we don't even acknowledge the binding agent of the nation, like that there's like a level of nationalism to being an American, that it actually does mean something, and it's got its own unique whatever.
Right.
And I feel like we're so obsessed with being not just we, but all of us. Like, I'm, Italian, I'm Chinese, I'm
right.
It's like, all right, and a lot of this comes from our Italian side, because we don't really, now on the Moriarty side, they do connect very heavily with the Irish side, with the dancing and all the different things, which is cool. But I don't connect with that at all. I've never really connected with the Irish side. Not the family, but I don't even really know what it means to be Irish, to be honest. Italian, I get it a little bit more intrinsically, but it feels like it's an Americanized and almost bastardized version of being Italian, to the point where we should just be like, we're American. And I'm wondering if you ever think about that as someone who grew up in such a heavily Italian and Irish environment with people from, off the boat. And if you feel like that's something that maybe our generation or our children's generations, like Dagan's kids' generation, should we start kind of eschewing that identity? Or is it something we kind of owe to all time, that we have to be Italian American? Because no one talks about themselves like that around the world except for here, as far as I understand.
Yeah, but and I'll say this because I guess I can, or I've never noticed it. It's a real Northeastern thing to say that I'm Italian, I'm Irish, I'm German, whatever it is, right? It's not like that here in Virginia. Right. People don't identify with their ancestors.
That's interesting.
Or they might, but they don't talk about it. Mm-hmm. So I really can't say they do.
Do you think that has to do with, not even being facetious, does that have anything to do with the Confederacy, you think?
I don't know. That's a very interesting question that I'd like to do some thinking on. But I know I'm American, but my heritage is Irish and Italian. Do you know what I mean? And I don't want to let go of that. Like, Grandpa didn't teach us how to speak Italian because he wanted us to be American.
Right.
right? So I know I'm American. I mean, he would say that to us all the time. Well, to me, because, my sisters, I don't even know if they ever asked him about speaking Italian, quite frankly. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would say to him all the time, Daddy, teach me how to speak Italian. He'd say, no, your mom doesn't know how to speak Italian. But him and Granny, Grandma's mom.
Yeah, his mother-in-law.
Right.
Right.
From Naples and then him from Sicily, they could speak to each other. They understood each other, but not perfectly, but they could figure it out. But all my cousins spoke Italian. All of them.
Is that funny?
Yeah, except us. We didn't speak Italian.
That is, because I was going to say the greatest generation, they were a generation still pushing assimilation and blend in and being American, but they held on. Obviously, they held on to those cultural touchstones. Right, but exactly. That's interesting that your cousins had it, though. I wonder if that was the difference between being in the suburbs and being in the city.
Well, I think my father wanted to move out of the city for a lot of different reasons. Especially because of all the stuff that went on in both families.
Sure,
but I think that he really wanted us to be American.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And so I do consider myself an American, but if someone says, what's your background? I'll say, I'm Italian. I do the 7 fish at Christmas.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like I say that, but I'm not speaking Italian. I mean, I was born here. You know what I mean? So I do. It's a very interesting question, Colin. It's, I feel American, but I don't want to ever let go of my roots.
Yeah. Yeah, Dave, how do you feel? Do you feel that kind of? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting question. What's funny as you brought it up, I realized I never even really thought about it. I think I feel being an American is just an unspoken thing. Like, it's of course I'm American, but I'm of this. So I always felt like the American thing never even needed to be articulated. I just feel like naturally, not only am I proud to be an American, although there's sometimes it's hard to be proud of what goes on in the country. I'm through and through proud to be American. But I feel like that's always like an unwritten thing. Like, of course I'm American. But it is interesting that we do identify that way in this country. And then you add that echelon that Mom was saying too, especially in the Northeast. If you think of, I'm not just saying the cities, but Boston, Philly, New York. It's like a very Northeastern thing to identify yourself as your nationality. As your ancestry, as your cultural background and how you identify.
Very common.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a big part. That Northeastern thing, the older I get, the more I realize that's just woven into my fabric, to the fact of I know if I ever leave here, which becomes more and more possible, I feel like, I'm going to miss it. It's so different. It's so different than anywhere else. But it is interesting. I just feel like my kids are probably the same way. I just think there's and maybe this started with with the boomers, with Mom and Dad's generation, but that whole thing of of course we're American, but we grew up identifying as this. And of course we were closer to the Italian side of our family, which also had some Irish. Don't forget, Grandma was half Irish, so we were closer to that Italian side of the family. So that's how we enjoyed identifying also. You know what I mean? That's the type of thing where if we grew up close to the Irish side of the family, I wonder if that would be a little bit more, how we and our kids and everything self-identify. My kids are such mutts. That's the thing. They have the Italian, they have the Irish, they have Polish, they have German, they have French. They're such a mixed bag. It's interesting, but Helene's family, especially her mom, they have all of that, but they identify as Polish.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
So you gravitate toward that one thing, which is funny,
Yeah, because it's like you said, there is Irish side parts of Mom's side, and there are German parts of Dad's side, and we never even acknowledge any of. Personally, I'm I don't know, that washes out.
There's so little German. Important. Yeah, there. It's a little. You guys have a little bit of German.
It's is Hempler? Is that Irish or is that German? That's the German side.
It's German.
Yeah, that's the German.
And I loved Pop. That's what we called him. Dad's grandfather. He was absolutely wonderful. That was your grandmother's dad.
Okay, Grandma Marie's dad.
Yeah, I don't even think
Marie
Dad. I don't
Himpler.
think I've ever even heard Dad talk about any of his grandparents.
No.
No, they were wonderful. They lived in Mineola. They lived very close to Nassau Hospital, where you were born. Well,
Oh,
you
wow.
weren't, Colin, but the other three were.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, they were just wonderful. Yeah, and he was remarried because his wife, your grandmother passed. So Pop was married to Aunt Tina, we used to call her, and she was from Canada.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they were awesome. We used to love going over there. So.
Let me ask you this.
How do you feel about that, though, Colin?
About what specifically?
About being American or Italian or Irish or whatever.
I think we have a real problem in this country that we've looked at, and I think rightfully so, like the idea of nationalism. It's not reductive to say the Nazis ruined that and fascism ruined that for a generation or generations of people. And that's totally fine because I don't want to be a fascist. But nationalism, just the belief in a country and a state, the sanctity of the state and being a patriot for the state in some way, above and beyond the people in government and stuff. I hate everyone in government. I don't trust any of these people.
I hate them.
That to me, I think is kind of dead. In fact, Dagan and I were talking, I don't know if you saw it, Mom, there's a trailer for a new movie coming out, A24 is producing, called Civil War. Did you by chance see anything? It's about like a modern American Civil War. And through the eyes of these journalists that are like reporting on it. And it kind of, I think I don't know, Dig, if you saw the dialogue about it, but it kind of hit close to home for a lot of people. People are like, this is a little
scary,
too on the nose, the way this all goes down. Now, the whole story is a little strange, but as Dagan and I were discussing, because it's about like how Texas and California secede from the United States and like fight together against the government, which is cool. And Colin loves his Fall of America lore. Love it. That Jericho shout out. There's not many things that really explore that about how America might fall, either from outside or within. But I just think that we it's not that we allow people. It's like, I don't like that there are just groups of people that continue to associate with the place that they wanted to leave. Like Italy was so great that we had to leave. Ireland was so great that we had to get out. And then we remain obsessed with it. People from these South American countries that are overrun by drug cartels and all of that, these societies are collapsing and they're obsessed with them, but they still come to the United States and then obsess over the culture and refuse to acclimate. And we all need to do that. I agree. In some way, I think it's extreme, like and it's such a shame, like what your parents almost did to you, and that you could have learned Italian and you didn't. I'm not saying that people shouldn't learn the language, shouldn't eat the food, shouldn't remain attached to the culture and all of that. But when you identify with that first, which so many people do, like I personally think it's strange that people fly the flags of other nations in the United States. Not that you can't. You can fly whatever you want. If you want, you have the right to fly the swastika if that's what I guess you want to do. I'm not saying that at all. Like you have the freedom to do that. But it's just weird that you would walk by someone's house and there wouldn't be an American flag, but like an Italian flag or a British flag. I remember actually in Bellport, on South Country Road, there was that house for many years that flew a British flag, like a Union Jack. I don't know if you remember that. I was like, what is that?
I don't remember that.
It was like right by Swandelly, like coming down Swandelly on the right.
You didn't see it a lot back then.
And I was just like, I just think that's weird. It's not that there's anything wrong with those places. It's just like, I don't know, man. What about a little bit of pride for us? Yeah.
Well, let's talk about 9/11 for a minute.
Oh, dear.
Because just about being American, right? That's when you knew everybody that was here. I'm not saying 100% of the people, but, a majority of the people that lived here were American because there was a flag hanging everywhere.
Yeah, it was crazy.
An American flag, all right? And the patriotism and the love for the country. And so you have to... It's too bad we can't go back to that, right? I don't mean 9/11, but I mean that feeling of patriotism. Like I'm an American and I'm going to fight for this thing, And who knows? It might come to that again, but it's, Oh,
I think it will. I think there's like some sort of black swan event that we can't even predict.
Something something always happens somewhere, right?
Well, I also just think, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, because I've been definitely saying this to Mike, is like there's a dark vibe to this era. Like there's a darkness And I've said it many times on the show, is that's one of the things I respect about the candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, who's running for the Republican candidacy, which he says that, which I think is important to note, that like this isn't a usual time in history. There's something weird and off about it. And it feels like something's going to happen. Something bad's going to happen. Bad things have already happened in Ukraine, in Israel.
Yeah.
Taiwan is the next, no doubt. Even things like Moldova, what's happening in Venezuela and Guyana, like, and all the shit with ExxonMobil and like corporatism and all that down there, the cartels in Central America, the illegal immigration problem in the United States. There's like, I hate to even put this in the words, and I have expressed this to my wife, but it's like, there's nothing really stopping what happened in Israel from happening here. What's stopping?
It's never stopping.
Like, if you have a death wish and you're going to die, which the Hamas terrorist accepted, what's stopping you from going into an American neighborhood and just literally going off? I mean, we have guns, but we wouldn't be able to defend ourselves against the militarism of these things. And you imagine, it's like, what's stopping that from just being activated here? You have really dark thoughts like that. I don't want to even even talk that into existence. But it's like, certainly there are analysts that are like, yeah, it wouldn't be that difficult to set things off here. It just is scary. It feels scary and tense.
It is scary and intense. But you know what? And I feel it very much like you're talking about right now today. But when I was a kid, I was in elementary school in like 55, right? I was 4 when I started. So it was 55, I think, 54 or 55 when I started. We had air raid drills. Right. We had to pull the curtain, and this wasn't going to save any of us.
Yeah, kiss your ass goodbye.
Pull the curtains. Yeah. Pull the curtains down in the school, and we had to get in the hallway and, crouch down and cover our heads.
Duck and cover, right?
It was frightening. Yeah. And I remember going home and saying to my dad, who was in World War II, I would say, Daddy, are we going to die? And he would be like, no, it's practicing. I don't want you to worry about that, but I think there's always that waiting for the other shoe to drop through the different generations. So I think now it's worse. It's worse because of what we have to really harm each other with.
Yeah. And also the Soviets were like a lot, they didn't have a death wish. They didn't want to fight either. They were just blustering too. But now you're dealing with people that don't care.
They don't care. They don't care.
That's scary. That's a scary thing.
Hit the buildings.
Yeah,
it is. I think we're really in this mode of holding out for a hero. Colin and I were just texting about this the other day. It's like, I think it's easy to feel like we're all floundering without proper leadership. And I feel like that's what we're waiting for. We don't rule in a vacuum. It's not every man for himself. The way it works in the world, especially, in the free world, is that we need proper leadership, and we just don't have it.
No, we have none.
I think there could be a return to something that makes us feel better, and that, doesn't provoke this alarmist, which is really easy to feel like, something's amiss. I think there could be a return to some sort of comfort and all of that, and righteousness and justice and all these kind of things, where we could actually feel better about the world our kids are growing up in. But that's what it's going to start with, getting the right leadership and just feeling like we could be confident in the people at the switch. I mean, that's really what it is. You know what I mean? The people in control, the people at the panel, like we have to have semblance of confidence in these people, and we don't have it right now.
Well, you have to have competent people in control.
Yeah. I mean, we're in that mode of just,
we need competent people.
Yeah.
People that can take a stand and aren't afraid to take a stand.
Yeah, and find common ground. It's been very polarized. I mean, a lot of this isn't new. I mean, this has been going on for a decade in this country anyway. Just it seems to be getting worse. It seems to be getting closer to the crisis point or whatever. But yeah, absolutely. And just, something where we could just return to reason and common ground. And just, I was saying to Colin in the text the other day, just like, give us a little bedrock to build on. Yeah. You know what I mean? We just got to be some kind of return to that. And I think we'll feel better. I think we'll feel better. And I don't think that's impossible, but I think we're in that period of just waiting now to see if that's feasible. And I think it is. I mean, it's kind of weird that what could be so far flung where it would be different now than it's ever been. I just think it's been a period where we're drifting, and there's got to be a return to that center, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about center politically. I'm just talking about stability, and something to build off of.
Yeah, the country, you guys would know more than me because you're older, but the way I even hear people talk and the things that people say, it's like, wow, this is a strange,
It's
people
very
just
strange.
openly talking about like, oh, revolution or civil war, or are we in a cold civil war already, which was something you and I were talking about, where there's like a kind of a theory already being like, we're kind of already in one. It's just the lines are just drawn differently. It's totally political, and it's urban and versus suburban and rural, basically. So it's not the Confederacy. And the reason that nothing happens is because there's too much peace and prosperity, that it's not bad enough. The thing I fear is if we don't get, and it's why I believe in the so-called like suicide vest candidate in 2024, like the one that like whoever's going to fuck it up, because it's like unbelievable to me that the powers that be will still give us these two candidates, and they need to be told at the ballot box, you can't do this. Like, this can't be. And the one thing I fear is that something bad's going to happen with really weak leadership, and you'll think it's funny that you call Donald Trump a fascist. And that's the, you know what I mean? Like, you'll get a real fascist. And
Exactly.
And that's the kind of stuff when fascism rises, and look at Italy and Germany and Japan as places where this stuff all rose in their own way through the misfortune of their societies. And the government, like a weak, especially in Weimar, a weak democratic government that just didn't respond to the will of the people at all. And so you let these horrible elements in, and they promise to fix things, and people are like, well, it can't be any worse than it is now. And that's how you get fucking dictatorships, and that's how you get all these different things. And I think that's the road we are certainly going down. People think that Donald Trump's the dictator, but I'm like, no, he's not. You can feel how you want about him. I'm not a fan of his myself, but he's not the dictator. He's not the problem. It's who comes after if we don't solve this. And I don't think he's the solution either, by the way. I just that's what I fear, is like, in my own political consciousness, and also in my knowledge of history, which is fairly extensive in the realm of American history, is that people don't openly talk like this typically. No. And so it used to be like national divorce, and now it's just like civil war. And I'm like, whoa.
It's so crazy to even think that could be a thing. Maybe because I'm old enough to it could be an age thing where it's like, wow.
You're almost old enough to remember the old Civil War.
I'm not too far off. We need those people to believe in. We just need those people to pin our hopes to.
Yeah, we do.
We really do. Yeah. And, I don't think I maintain like there's a beating heart under this country that just, like Mom's saying with 9/11, that for some reason, for good or for bad, just needs to be stirred up every now and then. So when push comes to shove, I think it'll be okay. And some of it is like, are people losing the thread between reality and fiction? If you asked me 5 years ago, I would have said yes. Now, even the most outlandish Civil War dystopian scenario sounds at least 1% feasible, which is scary. Mm-hmm. Right. This used to be George Orwell shit.
Yeah, like this is like Harry Turtledove.
Yeah, 1984.
But you got to hold on to optimism, and you got to just think that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, even if it's a tiny pinprick right now. And you got to just hold on to hope. You just got to root for some sort of change. I mean, it's got to be some change is coming. I just hope it's a change for the better. I know that's what people want.
Yeah, I agree.
So
there's a chilling scene in that. I'll show it to you, Mom, when we're done, or I'll send it to you on your phone for later. In that Civil War trailer, Jesse Plemons, is that his name? The kid? He plays a really chilling character. And there's a scene where these like journalists walk up to this. He's like a soldier with in his camo, and he's got an M4 or something. And they're like, "We're Americans," and he's like, And he laughs and he's like, what kind of Americans? And like looks at them or whatever. And it's, or which type, I think he actually says, which type of American or something like that. And I was like, wow, that's so fucking eerie and scary and not what I want. If the country does have to split up in the future for some reason, it's got to happen peacefully. Like, you know, but my hope is that, because some people would argue like it was never meant to be this big and you can't have countries this big and it's not really been that long that it's been this big and so on and so forth. But my hope is that it's perpetual. It's supposed to be. We fought a whole civil war about it being perpetual in the 1860s, but
I'd rather Long Island just secede. Like Long Island just become a state.
That's a movement. There was a time when both
that's been a movement for a long time.
Yeah, it has, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a flag for it and everything. There was a time, Dad could explain it more, I think, but there was a time when both the Suffolk and Nassau County supervisors were both secessionists and I guess tried, like, or got like the closest to making it its own state, you know? Because those are the two counties on Long Island for people that don't know.
And Jersey, you know, there's New York, Jersey, and there's Philly, Jersey, and they should be divided in half.
Well, maybe they will be in this upcoming Civil War. That's what when Jesse Plemons is asking you what kind of American you are, he's like, are you a Sheets American or a Wawa American?
Do we just expand New York to get North Jersey and just expand Pennsylvania?
Yeah, like
to get
annex
South
it?
Jersey? I like that.
Yeah, well, Maine was once part of Massachusetts, and you know they split. All sorts of things have happened to other states. You know, West Virginia and Virginia, and so on and so forth.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Well, that got a little darker than I expected, but I have a more
really got dark.
Oh, I love dark conversation. You know that, but I have a question that I think is interesting. I think you'll have a great insight into this, Mom. Is how has the internet and generally just technologies, are you cognizant of how unique your experience has been as a person in your generation? We often talk about the unique placement of various generations. That I was probably like or elder millennials are really the last people that lived in an analog world as children, right? For instance, you lived in a world, like you were born into a world where television wasn't even a common thing in people's houses yet. That was when it was starting to happen in 51, 52, 53.
You're right.
You were born into an era where things like, I say this to Mike all the time. I'm like, I would be scared as fuck if I grew up, if I was like Mom's age and I'm like, why is the hot dog that I used to pay 5 cents for now $5? How is that? That would make me melt down inside. Like you've seen so much and you've done so much, but from a technological standpoint, I'm especially eager to know how you've kind of observed it, because when you were my age, computers were just infiltrating homes as a rule. That means you lived so much of your life without them.
And well, not even like in homes when I was your age. Yes.
Yeah. Like in the late 80s, you know, like mid to late 80s.
I'm thinking of you as
and we didn't get our first computer. Yeah. Dad got his in like 92 or 93 and you got yours in 96. And I was like, and that was considered kind of like on time, but I find it so interesting that you've seen, and it's not like, look how old you are. It's just, you've seen so much from a unique standpoint. Imagine
No, you're right.
I was reading a long time ago that book Sapiens. I can't remember the guy's name. He's an Israeli anthropologist. And he notes that there was basically like 300,000 years where nothing happened. Like, in other words, like people used the same tools. They started the same fires. There was nothing. They were just living and dying with no revelations and no technological advancement and no sociological advancement, no written word, no wheel, no LLC, you know, like none of these major advancements. And look at all you've seen. You've seen so much.
I think about it all the time. Like we had a television, you know, they used to come in cabinets. You know what I mean? It was like a piece of furniture. You know, the screen was as big as like a laptop screen, maybe a little bit bigger. But we had a television. And then I remember, and I don't remember how old I was, but I was probably like before I was 10. We got a colored television and we were the first people on the block to have one. We had a lot of people in our block.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That was like a really big thing. I remember even the telephones, the rotary dial phones. My girlfriend Beth's dad worked for the telephone company. And whenever a new kind of phone would come, he'd bring it to us and he'd hook it up for us, right? He'd just bring us a new kind of phone. And then it was the touch tone phones. And then it was the princess phone, right? And the princess phone at first had a dial. It was actually a rotary phone. But then it was the touch tone phones. Yeah, we went through a whole lot. I remember when your dad and I were in the same typing class in high school. And we used to sit next to each other, and we sat next to each other because we could just laugh and fool around the whole time, right? But his hands were so big, and we had typewriters, typewriters where you had to press on everything, right? And then when I started working, so that was when I was like maybe 15. And when I started working in the city, I was probably 18 or 19 by that time. I want to say it was 18. They had Selectric typewriters. It had the ball that went around. Like you still had to press. Like even if you see me use a laptop or my computer at work, I have a very hard touch. It's because I learned on a typewriter. You know what I mean? Like you guys just like do this. Like it's very soft touch, but I'm really banging on the keys, And then, the computer, I think we got a computer, Colin, because I started college again.
Yeah.
And I needed a computer.
I remember buying it. I remember it clear as day. I remember
we went to the
Circuit City,
whatever it was, Circuit City
in Portsmouth or Newington, New Hampshire. And I remember the that we bought the Sony Vaio. I ended up inheriting it. That was the computer I wrote all my game facts on. But later, several years later, and I was so excited. And we had TTLC. That was the first dial-up internet we had, which was like this New Hampshire thing.
I used to call it tender, loving care. That's what I call it.
Yeah, people might remember, and they still exist, I'm sure. But you had these sort of boutique local internet companies. You could be on AOL or not Netscape, AOL or CompuServe or whatever, but you could just connect with these random companies and pay a small nominal fee. And so I remember us doing that, and that's how I found my way into the world of this world. That was a seminal moment. That was a massive butterfly effect moment, and we were even a little late to getting one.
Because I didn't have the money to buy one. I really had to buy it because of the college work that I was doing. But also, like thinking about banking, like that's all like completely different. You can do it on your phone now. You can take a picture of your check and deposit.
It's incredible.
Right.
It's like,
Mom, I've long thought about this and even tried to research it and watch some videos. Like there's all these random videos on YouTube uploaded, but banking back before the computers, like how did this even work? Like, how did you know? And I know that this is how check fraud was rampant. That's what Catch Me If You Can is all about. Basically, that awesome movie is that it was somewhat easy to actually, write fraudulent checks or whatever. But it's so fascinating that was all analog. Like you have an account, you write a check, there's someone going through it and making a note of it, I guess, or something. It's like, it seems so quaint.
Even when you deposited money, I remember when I went to St. Aidan's, it was attached to some local bank. Like we went to the Roslyn Savings Bank in Roslyn, my family. There wasn't a lot of banks. Like there are banks on every corner now. It wasn't like that. But in St. Aidan's, they were attached to some local Williston Park, I guess, bank. And my mom they'd send a little passbook home with you. You had your own passbook, and she would put $1 in it every week. And I'd bring it to school, and they'd put $1 in my account, and the next week they'd give me the passbook back to take home, and I'd look and I had $5. Do you see what I mean? Like they would put it in the passbook.
Right.
But if you lost that passbook, who knows?
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like it's so, we take it for granted, just that level of interconnectivity. I think about that with delivery of packages too. I was talking to some guy that worked at UPS in the 70s and 80s, and I was like, dude, how did it work? Like, how did it work? And it was all done by hand, like all like paper, literally the term paper trail. Right. It's like, holy shit, that's so insane. Like when you would, like a carbon paper with triplicate and all of that. That's where all that kind of shit came from. And I'm like, that's so crazy. I never even think about that anymore.
Yeah. When I worked at the dry cleaners, it was like that. Like we did that was my first job. I made 90 cents an hour. And we used to write the tickets out so that it came, like we would keep one would go like with the clothes and one would stay on the counter. So we'd remember to get that back whenever, it had to be filed, Yeah. If you forgot to file something, you couldn't find someone's clothes.
It's pretty unbelievable.
No, I'm being serious.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we had the thing that went around, like they still use.
Yeah, right.
But we'd be like, what color was your coat? Oh, it was beige. Oh, great. There's like 40 beige coats coming around on this thing. You know, it was crazy. Yeah, I made 90 cents an hour. And then I remember he said, I'm going to give you a raise. And I was all excited because he gave me $1 an hour. And so I made $10 a week because I worked like, you know, 6 hours on Saturday and hours during the week or something. It's crazy.
You guys have seen it's insane. Like your generation has seen such broad change and evolution in terms of technology and society and trends. And like you're saying, salaries, the price of goods. I mean, you guys have been around. But here's the thing, Mom, that I'm wondering about, because I'm old enough to remember when it wasn't going so well with the boomers and technology, like in the 80s. Like I thought Dad was going to hemorrhage trying to hook up like my first Nintendo. And this was a technical man. This was a man that could wire the electricity for a house or plumb or master carpenter. Like he was a technical guy. But like I remember him trying to figure out like how to hook up our first top loader VCR. And it was like, getting up and I thought he was going to have a heart attack. So now, so there was a time before you guys, the boomer generation, like you guys are very savvy with tech. Like you have your smartphones, you have your laptops, you legendarily hijacked Facebook.
Yeah, oh yeah, that was one of the heists of the century, wasn't it?
Kicked all the younger kids. Now you're doing it with Instagram. It's like, but there was a time where you guys it wasn't going so well with the technology. It was like, I'll hold on to the 8-track in the car. I can't figure out this newfangled CD player.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. So what happened? What was the spark?
I think that maybe it was we were being encouraged by the younger people talking about how much they could do, like on the computer or on different programs or whatever, that we didn't want to miss out or something. Because I remember it was something to do. It might have been like the 8-track, not the 8-tracks, the VHS. Remember we used to have the movies, the VHS movies. And I remember going to Grandma's and we bought her a VHS player, right? And she like looked at me and said, "You think I'm going to be able to use this?" And I was like, "Look, Ma, come over here." And I remember putting like little pieces of paper with tape, like push here. This is to start. This is to move it forward, like doing all that. So we did embrace it, but I think it was because we needed to.
Yeah, it didn't come
easy to us.
You had to eventually catch up. Yeah. I remember Dad being so frustrated with that first VCR. Where it was like, Dad, like I was like 11, 9 or something. I was like, Dad, it's young. 2 cords. It's 2 cords, and one of them plugs into the wall. I don't understand what you don't understand. Like you wired all the electricity in the house. Like what is it was like almost like you guys didn't want to understand.
I think part of that though, it's so funny you say that because I had this misunderstanding as a young child that it was difficult to hook up your console because of what seemed like a rigmarole for various things to make it happen. And you suddenly realize it's like, this is the most trivial thing. Even then it was trivial because you just plugged it into the coax cable.
Yeah,
it was literally all you did. That was literally it.
And it like so angry and like acted like huffing and puffing, face turning red. Thought he was gonna have a stroke. Like, Dad, I don't understand. You just built a deck. You literally just built an entire deck. What is happening?
Yes,
and working on engines, like building cars from the ground up.
He was an aircraft mechanic in the Air Force.
This should be easy. Why?
Right, so I'm just like, I don't know.
Was it the pot that you guys? I don't know what was happening.
How
we're talking about that now.
How long did you guys? You made it so you were smoking pot into the 80s?
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was into the 80s.
I didn't really smoke pot after I had kids. Only sometimes.
Mom, I said on the show, I don't mean to put you guys on the spot, but I found your stash box.
I know, I heard you.
which P.S. was not hidden. It was just on top of the dresser. It's just a wooden box. It's like, oh, I opened it up and I remember seeing like, I guess what was like a package of rolling papers and baggies of, stuff that looked like seasonings,
It
like
was
paprika
oregano.
or something. I mean, I was a kid, so I didn't realize it. I think I'm going to embarrass you for a second. I think I also found you guys condoms.
Oh.
Oh my!
It was all in the same. It was all in the same.
Oh.
Well, that was like the good time box. That was like the Friday night. That was like the Friday night box.
Oh,
Everything was the same thing. The weed, the rolling papers, the prophylactics, everything was together in there.
Oh boy!
Whatever cassettes were reserved for that night, I don't know what was in the Christopher Cross. Like those were up there.
I hear you.
Jesus Christ!
Steely Dan.
Why were you up in that box anyway?
I don't know. I was fascinated with the top of Dad's dresser because he had. Remember,
it was on
he
top
used
of
to
his
call
dresser.
you that Charlie Brown character, that enigmatic Charlie Brown character, the girl with the naturally curly hair, right?
Oh yeah.
He had a greeting card of that, or a little illustration, a little greeting card sized illustration of that on his dresser. And it was a cartoon. So as a kid, I was like, oh, I was enamored with it. I would just look at it. And so I think it was on there like that I think he had a trinket box where maybe he kept his watches and different things, maybe some stuff that he had from the firehouse, his badges or whatever. I don't know, patches and things. But then the prophylactic.
But then you had to
box.
open the bigger box, didn't you?
I don't know. One time I was just like, what's in this one? It was like a really pretty, like engraved mahogany box. It wasn't like, it was just interesting. Or maybe it was like a little miniature treasure chest. I don't remember.
No, I think
really
I think Colin actually had it at one point. I have it in my garage now. I
think
think
you
it had
still have it?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
I think it was the one that it looked like bark.
Oh yeah, I know that. I know that.
Yes,
I did have that. I used to keep my.
That's what it was.
I used to keep
Colin had it. I still have that. It's in my garage.
So that was the thing. You found this stuff in Dig. That was the
one.
I used to keep my GI Joe file
one.
cards in that box.
Came full circle. Just came full circle. I mean, I don't. That was. Of course, as I found it as a little kid, I didn't understand what any of that stuff was. Then when I got older enough to realize that this could have been in 81. I mean, this could have been in the early 80s, right? But then I remember realizing, looking back, oh, my parents were still smoking weed in the 80s, But again, this could have stopped by 82 for all I remember, that type of thing.
Again, it reminds me of Poltergeist.
I never smelled it. I never smelled it around the house. I never saw you guys smoking anything. Dad smoked ciggies all the time.
He probably rolled like, what would they call that? What do they call those, like spliffs or whatever?
Oh yeah,
where he would roll tobacco and weed. Dad probably did that.
No, he never
did. He?
I don't think he ever did that. I don't remember that. No.
Interesting.
No, we just would wait until he went to sleep.
You know what's funny, Mom? I remember you guys. I mean, that was the crazy. I mean, for me being old, Dana probably has similar memories. You guys, the divorce was jarring because you guys, I remember 15 years worth of you guys really being like best friends, like pals, that type of dynamic. But I do remember you guys, once we finished dinner, when Dad would be home, dinners were an event. Then the kids would have dessert. Then we would all disperse. And you guys would just linger at the table, you and Dad, with your reuniti, or like your...
We would drink red wine.
Whiskey sours or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And you would just talk. And that was an interesting thing that you said earlier, which I don't know if I've ever told you this. Like, for me, podcasting came along 5-6 years ago. Mid-40s was a late love in my life. But I think why I was always fascinated with just conversation, right? And that kind of companionship and storytelling was because I always saw it with you and Dad, with you and Grandma and Grandpa, coffee and cake at the table, you and cousin Carl. It was really a history of the adults sitting around, enjoying each other's company, talking a little smack, maybe a little gossip, and just conversation, telling jokes, ribbing, that whole thing. That I don't really feel like I was an old soul as a kid, but that spoke to me because if I paid attention, I could learn something about the people that I loved in my life. They would tell a story that I never heard before, or say something about somebody I didn't know very well, or this was a dynamic of the way it was with these people growing up. It would give me an insight into, my elders, my parents, my grandparents, aunts and uncles and stuff like that. So you guys really kind of instilled that love of conversation in me, for sure. Like that was such a big, because I saw how much you guys enjoyed each other. Those family members gathered around the table. Could have been 4 of you, could have been 2 of you, could have been 6.
Right.
And also the history of food being associated with that.
Yeah.
Coffee and cake, cookies, goodies,
we were
mealtime, whatever. So that was something I always wanted to go off and play, but that was something where I always had my ear pricked to what the adults are saying at the table, because I found it fun.
Yeah.
To hear the stories and to hear you guys and for hours, you guys would just talk for hours, grandma smoking cigarettes the whole time, that type of thing, Yeah. It was early podcasting. It's really what it was. We just weren't filming it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Everyone's already getting themselves in enough trouble. I can only imagine.
No, your dad and I were, we were friends before we went out together. So that, when we got married, our song was "You've Got a Friend."
Yeah.
So, and we lost it along the way, sadly, because I never thought that would happen. But I think our jobs, him being away all the time, the jobs that we both had, I think that really contributed to it just started to unravel. Because we never got to spend time together. We would work opposite shifts.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, you diverge.
Well, we did. We did purposely work opposite shifts, not realizing it was going to destroy everything for us.
Yeah, it's hard. But I do remember you got like that genuine, the laughter, all that kind of thing. Like that was a really important part of my upbringing, was having that, and all of us at the table too. And the way, like, I get so frustrated with my kids because mealtime isn't like that for them. Their life is they're much more plugged in. It's a much more frenetic pace for kids.
Yeah, it's very different today.
Like trying to instill that in them for years now has been a challenge, but I get so frustrated with them because I loved it as a kid. I really loved being together with everybody at the table and laughing.
But they don't know that. Well, they don't know that. It's a different, it's still the nuclear family. You're still together, but you're not together. They want to do this, right? That's what they all want to do. They don't understand
it's the screens.
Importance. They don't understand
We've all been
the
broken
importance
by it,
of.
though.
I'm sorry.
We've all been broken by it. I think they're just so susceptible.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying
grew up with it.
That's the way they grew up.
Yeah.
I remember when Ayla was born, and I had her at my house, and she was like a year old maybe, and she was standing in between my legs, and I had my phone, and I said, baby, she was looking at pictures. I said, go like this, like teaching her how to swipe, right? And Allie came in and she went crazy. She was like, what are you doing? I said, she's going to have this in her hands when she's 3 years old, because everybody has a phone now.
Yeah.
Right? And I said, I'm just trying to teach her how to swipe. She was like, no, Ma, no. But you know what? I was right. You know what I mean? They grew up with it. They grew up with the technology. So it's part of who they are, but they don't know the other part that we all know.
Right.
They
they have no tether to a world without it.
Yeah, it's probably, I can already tell with some younger people, like, our nephews and stuff, where there's it's already romantic to them in some way, like the past, like the analog past, the disconnected past. I do think that Stranger Things did a lot for that generation to make that happen, but there is a romanticism behind that where they want to go back to vinyl. They want to play with cassettes and use old computers and do stuff like that. I see a little bit of that, which is cool.
There's a little bit of that.
Curiosity.
There is books as opposed to
but it's still computers.
Tablet.
It's like, I wish they would just say, tell me a story.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, sit with me and tell me a story. Because when they, there's nuances when you tell a story than when you read it or you're watching a film on it. There's nuances. They can ask questions about the story, like like Dagan just asked about the box that he found all the stuff in. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I think that I feel bad because I wish they had that. I loved listening like you did, Dagan. I loved listening to the stories my mother would tell, my father would tell, and then like things would come up from the basement, like she'd bring her wedding dress up. You know what I mean? Like she would, it was just fun because you learned about history that way. They were really fun. They were really fun parents.
Yeah, you know what's funny about the kids too? Like my kids, and maybe it's just their ages, but they're only just starting to express like interest in hearing stories of like when Lee and I were still in school, or
right,
things that I would stories about my mom and pop when I first met them, and being in North Philly, and stories of you and dad, like that type of thing where I just ate it up as a kid. Maybe that's because I would go on to be involved in storytelling and be a bit of a storyteller myself. It attracted me, and I don't know if that's their path. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that oral tradition of just wanting to know more, I always got that on your side of the family, Mom, on the Ruggiero side, but I never really got it on Dad's side of the family. And that was always a great source of frustration for me because I always wanted to know more.
Tell stories. Mm-mm.
Dad's not really a storyteller. Dad's a good conversationalist. Yeah,
but he's not a storyteller.
I love talking to him, but he's not a storyteller.
No, he's quiet.
He is. He's reserved.
He's more quiet.
There's a humility, I think, that plays into it too, where it's just not his thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he'd rather listen.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a great listener. That's what he does.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what he does for a living. So, yeah, but that's the thing. I feel like there's so much more to learn about everything I don't know on the Moriarty side of the family, which is almost like, I almost feel like it would be really fun to go to Uncle Michael, or go to Aunt Barbara or something if I want, or Aunt Julie or one of those people, just so like, fill in these gaps for me, man. Like I have so many questions.
We used to have so much fun with Aunt Maureen and Uncle Hal, like we used to see them all the time. Aunt Christine, when we moved out east, I saw her more. I mean, Aunt Barbara was in my wedding. She was in my bridal party.
Right.
It was Aunt Mary Ellen that was the baby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
She's
Aunt
the
Mary
youngest.
Ellen
I
was
always
still a
forget
kid.
that. Yeah.
Right. Uncle Michael was in the bridal party. So I think that the girls could probably tell you stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think Aunt Maureen and Aunt Christine could probably tell you stories, more stories.
That would be fun.
Aunt Barbara was a Jets cheerleader.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always forget that.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, you knew that, right?
Yeah, because I saw she put a picture, or someone put a picture of her on Facebook years ago where she's in front of the little jet like thing on the field.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's like a promotional picture or something.
I don't know if I ever saw that. I always forget that.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
And that's when they still played on Long Island.
Yeah.
Mom, I have a final exit question for you. We can linger on this.
Who's your favorite?
Wait, what was it? What was the question? Sorry, I spoke over you.
Who's your favorite?
Oh, who's your favorite? We all know. We don't need to go down that road. I don't want to embarrass everyone again. I mean, how much you guys are like all gluttons for punishment. There's no way she's going to justify any of you. At the very least, she's not. She's going to say that none of us are her favorite, or she doesn't have a favorite. But we all know that that's not true.
All right, we know me and Colin are your favorites. Dana and Allie aren't here, so they don't have to hear any of this. Is Colin your favorite? I know Colin's your favorite. Is he only your favorite because he's the richest?
Oh, that's definitely what I
You guys are getting older now. You want to be taken care of. I get it, but just admit that's the reason. Just admit it.
I don't have a favorite.
Mom's been lining this up for decades.
Okay, Kyle, I interrupted.
No, it's all good.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kyle.
I was going to ask you, just out of sheer curiosity, now that you're really playing around and talking and activating on retirement, I'm curious, like what it is you'd like to do with your time, because you already dedicate some of your time to some causes and do different things. You have a bunch of hobbies. You're very curious. We've always been a very curious person in my experience. So I wonder like what you're going to have like all the time in the world, which is awesome. I wonder what you might do with it.
So, I always, I'm taking pottery classes now. So that's always fun for me. They're hard to get into. I didn't get into it for the next semester, but that's okay.
How come? Like, is it timing?
It fills up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it just fills up like really fast. I want to start making soap. I have all that stuff.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Right.
Mike is good at that.
I would.
Mike is good at that. She makes soap.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I want to start doing that. I want to continue being a CASA. That's a court-appointed special advocate for abused and neglected children. The court appoints you to make sure that you're the voice of the children in court, if people don't know what that is. And so you have to get to know the family and the kids, and you have to write reports for the judge, and then go to court with the family and speak for the child through your report. They don't ask you questions. I've been doing this for 7 years, and thank God, knock on wood, they've never had to ask me a question. They understood everything that I wrote. So I want to continue to do that. I'd really like to work with like Veterans Affairs to see if I can help them, get jobs or give them advice, because I'm a recruiter and that's what I do. I would like to continue to work with the Orbit program, which is in the jail for opiate recovery people. This, I think I put a program together. Did you know this?
Through your employment, right? Of giving people like a conduit out or whatever.
They didn't want me to do it. So I just went there and did it myself, and it worked really well. We got a national award for counties for it. Yeah. And I just put a program together to help them get positions and to have faith in themselves. What do I want to say? Their jail time, their being put in jail doesn't reflect who they are necessarily.
Right. No, that's important. Rehabilitation is vital.
Yeah. So I think that that's really important. So I just talked to them today. And I think I just want to enjoy my kids and my grandkids and maybe do some traveling. I have to get my passport renewed. That's a fiasco because the DMV put my name wrong on my license.
Yeah, Micah was just telling me this. Yeah, that you.
Micah,
she said that you explained this because of something with her changing her name at the. She had some sort of anecdote from you about this. Yeah, that's what she told me.
Yeah, they put my name Betty, Ann all together instead of putting Betty Ann with no comma separated.
Yeah, that's gonna be a problem.
Yeah, and they won't change it until I get a passport, and I can't get the passport
you're
until
in limbo.
I have a license.
Right.
Yeah,
that's why she told me, because she told me that. You must have told her that. Yeah.
Yeah, I must have told her. It's frustrating
Yeah,
because I said, well, why don't you just look back in your records? But anyway, they didn't want to do that.
Sure.
I've been to the Motor Vehicle Bureau 4 times now. And they keep me there for hours and they don't do anything.
You should write to not your congressman, whatever they call them here.
I think I have to write to the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles. And I think I will, because it's really just aggravating me now.
Yeah, man.
And then I want to, read, do some reading, do some gardening.
Gardening, nice.
We used to have a beautiful garden when you were little. Mm-hmm. Do you remember it?
I don't.
Yeah. Do you remember it?
Well, I remember our flowers and all of that, but I don't remember our gardens. No, that was in Medford.
We had the garden we didn't do it in Brookhaven. Yeah. We did it when we were in Medford. Yeah. And I used to freeze and can the vegetables for the entire year. That's how big it was.
Oh, it's a victory garden. That was a huge garden.
Yeah, it was. And I'd like to do that again, because I really enjoy getting my hands dirty. That's why I like to work with clay. I just like the feel.
Well, you'll be able to trade all that during the new Civil War for ammo.
Oh,
whatever you.
Well, when we move to West Virginia, I can start a garden there. We'll have to get some canning stuff.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I would love to do that again, and then just be able to keep my house nice and clean, like daily, instead of doing everything in one day. And I'm 73 years old. I'm tired when I get home from work.
I know. Yeah, you got to take care of yourself. Take good care of yourself.
So I don't know. Did that answer your question?
More than answer my question. I think that's ambitious. It's great. Because a lot of I love the whole leisure path too, of just being like, I'm just gonna fucking play golf and whatever people do. I'm like, that's cool too. I don't know what I'll do if and when I retire. Something tells me
I mean, that might all change.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon for me. I think I'd get bored.
no. And that's what I'm afraid of getting bored. That's why there's so many things. And because I like to give back, it's always been part of me. Like, I was a religion teacher. I was the vice president of the PTA for years. I was a Brownie leader, and I was on the Boy Scout Eagle Council. And, I've always done things. So I don't think that I can sit still. It's not in my countenance to sit still and relax.
I think that's good.
You're selfless. I mean, that whole thing was very on brand. It took 5 minutes to get to what you were going to do for yourself. That's very, very on brand for Mom. And, that's what I wanted to say about you, Mom, going out. Like I don't get the opportunity to talk to you about this a lot, but you were like the main source of inspiration for me for trying to model myself around what you did as a mom to be a good parent. Like there were so many blessings. The only curse you had handed down to us about the kind of mom you were the standards were just too high. Like, I couldn't eat lunch at another kid's house, because the peanut butter and jelly was applied with such TLC, or the sandwich was cut just so, or the orange slices. You did everything with 110% of love. And I remember that as a kid. And, it would be to the point, like, even the second best mom was like, I can't eat dinner there. Like, it's just not going to be like Mom does it.
Aww.
Not just with food, especially with food, but with everything and anything, just comfort, the way our laundry smelt, the way we always had everything. Like, you were a selfless parent. You really were. And, if I could be like a fraction of that to the kids. So that's you were the best.
Father.
You were the best.
Proud of you.
It's just that it was too on spec. I couldn't do it. I couldn't like slum it at anybody else's house because the standards were just too high. It was like the Four Seasons at home. Not in terms of money or luxury. It was just the way.
Definitely not in terms of money.
That, you know what I mean? It was like, I couldn't go to the Marriott. I couldn't go to the Super 8. You know what I mean? It wasn't going to be done right at Joe Blow's house. So,
yeah. I will say that, like I said before, the best days of my life were taking care of you. And, it's very sad to me that was destroyed. But it didn't mean that I didn't still want to take care of you. You know what I mean? Like, that was the best part of my life, was taking care of you. And it was my job. I mean, your father and I decided, I probably never should have started working. Your father and I decided that I would take care of the kids and he would take care of the house, and that's the way we did it for a lot of years.
Yeah. You were a great mom, but you know what's funny, Mom? Grandma I loved your mom, our grandma. Don't get me wrong. The best. I mean, the best. I miss her every day of my life. She was wonderful. And she had great taste because I was her favorite, and they're wonderful and impeccable taste as a human being, as a grandmother. But she, like you said earlier, you alluded to this. She was able to have a lot more autonomy. She was very fashion forward as a working mom, right? But she really needed to be Betty. She needed to be Elizabeth Ruggiero. She couldn't just be mom. She couldn't just be grandma. She had to have that dimension to her life. So you had every right to think that you could have that too. You know what I mean? Now, grandma had grandpa to lean on, and also lived. It's important to note that grandma and grandpa lived with Granny and Gramps, grandma's parents too.
Right.
So she was able to have Granny and Gramps there as a crutch, and they had that support system built in. But you only wanted what a lot of people want. They want to have families and they want to have jobs, and there's a lot wrapped up in identity with that and wanting to do good in the world. And, we do it. I do it. Helene does it. So it's you guys.
I know.
It wasn't.
And thank you for saying that.
Of course.
It's like, a saving grace, but it's, I started to lose who I was because I was alone all the time and I was always with kids, and I loved it. I loved being with the kids. I didn't think it was going to change my life so drastically. You know what I mean? But it really drove a wedge, and and I don't know. Your father had another family at the firehouse, which was awesome. But I used to tell him all the time, I wish I could be with you the way they are. They spend more time with you than I do.
Yeah.
But then I think he started to feel with me flying, all the time. I flew like 3 days a week, probably, sometimes 4 if I had overnights. And I think he started to feel when he saw me with the crews, like at a Christmas party or something, he was like, they really care about you. And I was like, well, yeah, it's the same thing. Because, you're going into a fire and you have to watch each other's back, but we have to do the same thing quietly. Like we have to be listening to what the pilots are saying, or the flight attendants, they need to be listening to what we're telling them, what's going on in the back or whatever. So I think that really, I don't think Dad liked it too much. You know what I mean? And
it's funny.
Just made
I
us.
heard him talk about it. I've never asked him. How did you feel? I don't know.
I don't think he would talk about it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I don't
know.
I've
never asked either.
No, but I think that didn't help. You know what I'm saying? Like it didn't help that I know he wanted me home. He used to tell me all the time, you need to quit and, stuff like that. And I was like, no, because I'm myself. I love being the kids' parents and I love being your wife, but I want to be me just for, several hours a week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Your generation was really doing the heavy lifting with figuring all that out. Like you were kind of doing the work for future generations. I mean, now the way it played out, it's very hard for both people to stay home just because of the cost of
Some
living.
people say that was the trap the whole time, was to like make it such that like it wasn't possible anymore. That the cost of living went up so much and the dollar eroded in value so much, and you have to have everyone working, and then you're paying all of the money for your childcare, and so a lot of people say it's just by design. It seems like its own form of serfdom almost. And
I mean, it's funny. I was thinking about that before on the way over here. I was thinking for some reason about childcare, and when your father and I had the childcare when he couldn't, Nancy, thank God.
Right.
I mean, Nancy, our babysitter, right? She was like your grandparent.
Yeah.
I mean, if I called her and said, I'm stuck in Boston, I can't get home, she'd say, I'll go over. You know what I mean?
Yeah. She was only around the block, right? 2 blocks or whatever.
Well, yeah, when we were in Medford, but she was like maybe a few miles away when we moved to Brookhaven.
Oh, was she still
Yeah,
yeah, definitely.
I don't remember
definitely.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, if it wasn't for her, I never would have been able to do what I did. So, but.
Well,
it was.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mom. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh.
I don't even know what I was going to say.
Fair
Go
enough.
ahead.
It's interesting to have so much time and space to think about the past. Like I think about it all the time. I always have though. And
me too.
And there's something, again, I always bring it up, but just like nostalgic memories are supposed to be, not supposed to be, you don't want them always to be, but nostalgia is supposed to be painful. That's the idea. That's the root of the word, that there's a longing for something that's gone and it can never be again. And that's kind of like what our show is dedicated to in some sense, which is cool and kind of brings it full circle. Mom, I'm glad we were able to have you on the show. I think people will be really pleased with this episode personally, but I'll leave that up to them. But I'm feeling like they're going to like this one. So I appreciate you taking the time.
I hope they do. I mean,
They're going to be asking for more, Betty Ann. More BAM is going to be.
You know what else I do want to do when I retire? I want to cook and put things online.
Oh yeah, you should. That would be fun.
How I'm going to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but I want to cook every day, I think, or at least once a week.
Yeah, and then film it. And, go on YouTube
yeah, you'll
or
have
something.
to teach me how to do it, and I'll put it online.
Yeah, that would be cool. We can definitely.
One of your fans, just really quick, one of your fans wrote to me. He DM'd me and asked me for the chicken cutlet recipe. And I gave it to him, and I said I'm going to do the best I can on a DM because and I did it, and I told him to put the grated cheese in the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
And he said that made all the difference.
Oh,
he was so cute.
Yeah, it gives it a little crisp, which is good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do appreciate everyone out there. I know it's fun because I get so much shit online, but I'm glad that my family doesn't seem to really get very much online, which is kind of cool. Like everyone seems to really be nice and treat my family well, and I appreciate that. Everyone's always nice to you, Mom, when they meet you, and
they are
the
nice
live
to
shows
you.
or whatever.
Wonderful.
So yeah, it's cool. It's nice
wonderful.
to see, and Dagan too. They're real.
But
Mom,
who's
you know
giving
what
you
would be
shit?
fun?
Who do I have to go after?
Oh my God. Always someone. Don't worry about it.
You're going to retire in the summer. Why don't we reconvene and do like a retirement roundup to check in, see how it's going?
Yeah, that's a nice idea.
Let's say you retire in June. Maybe you get a taste of retirement
happening.
for a few months. In September, you come on the show. I'm not saying you're not going to come on before that, but you come on in early fall. All right, I've been retired for a season. Here's how it's going. Type of thing.
And Colin was right. All I wanted to do was sit in the backyard and relax.
That's what you should do.
Yeah, just hang out. You've earned your right, my friend.
Yes.
All right.
If you don't, I'm going to do
that
it.
You know. I'm sorry. What did you say?
If you don't retire, I'm just gonna relax in the backyard every day. You could keep going. I'm finished.
And maybe I know that Colin doesn't really want to go to Jersey, but I would really like him to go to Jersey because guess what I have in the kitchen in Jersey, Colin?
What?
I have your Ninja Turtles tray.
Oh yeah, that's right.
On the counter.
That would be cool to rediscover again. I love that. I said that earlier.
You did.
That was a.
I do have it. I have Dagan's Star Wars garbage can.
Oh, the Return of the Jedi one.
In the bedroom.
Yeah, that would be cool to recover. That would be cool to recover. I'd actually take that if I could.
Oh yeah,
that's a good one.
Well, yeah. Well, especially if I, close up the house, then you're gonna get it.
Cool. Yeah. No, we have to convene all together. It's been a while since we've all like really gotten a chance outside of a holiday to convene, and there's always like the zaniness of Thanksgiving or Christmas or something in the background. It would be cool to kind of all get together. But I agree.
No, it would be.
Go ahead, Mom. I'm sorry.
It would be fun because not everybody could stay at my house because I only have 3 bedrooms, but. If Dagan can use the Catherwood's house, you know what I mean?
Oh,
also
down
for
the shore.
sleeping purposes, then we could really have a good time.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Or, we can get hotel rooms too, but I don't want you to have to pay money.
Well, we'll sort it out when the time comes, but I like Dagan's idea of having you back on once you do, pull the trigger and retire, and we can have you back on and assess the situation. But
that would be awesome.
But I appreciate.
And I want to thank everybody.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Mom.
No, just thank everybody for being kind to me online. Because they really are. You have the best people surrounding you, the 2 of you.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome.
Best people in the world.
Yeah, we've cultivated a really great audience.
They're amazing.
Some of them are insane, but most of them are.
So are we.
Yeah, they're great.
We're in good company. They're in good company.
Who you're talking to.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I'm glad that we were able to have this podcast. And again, Dagan's totally right. We'll reconvene and have you back and touch base, and maybe let the audience in on asking you what they want, asking you questions if they want, because we don't really.
Oh,
that's a great idea.
We don't really open up threads for
idea.
Knockback anymore, so that would be cool to do.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
All right, well, now we're gonna go. We have a reservation in 30 minutes, so we're gonna go to dinner.
I can't wait.
Meet Larry. Yeah, I'm hungry.
I'm sorry that you're not going to come with us, Dagan.
I'll meet you there.
Yeah, come on down.
Be there in 5 hours or so.
But Mom, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate you.
Thank you for asking me.
Great job.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I know you had to
feel honored.
I know you had to take a little time away from work, so I'm glad that we weren't putting you out or anything like that. And then Dag, good to see you as always, my friend. This is our last recording of the year. So this is my last one of the year. Yeah, so I'm done.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, Happy New Year. If we were on the set of like a TV show, it'd be like, that's Dagan Moriarty, everyone. And everyone would start clapping because he would have done his last scene and everyone would have clapped and he would have walked off stage. Happy New Year. Hanukkah's over, but Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
I don't know when this is going live actually, so maybe Christmas would have already happened as well. Yeah, happy holidays, generally speaking. Happy New Year.
Right.
We'll see you next time for more patreon.com/laststandmedia, obviously for early free access and ad-free support as well. And laststandmedia.store for merch. Really appreciate all the Black Friday orders and the holiday orders as well. We did
it's awesome.
more than 600 orders for Black Friday, which is wild. And we're doing it all ourselves. And by ourselves, I mean Micah does it. So
she's a good girl.
All right, my friends.
I love you, boys.
I love you too, Mom.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
Love you.
And all right, we'll see you guys next time. Till then, goodbye.
Bye.
Knockback, a retro and nostalgia podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and the Philadelphia suburbs, USA. The show was conceived by and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Dagan Moriarty. Knockback's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Knockback, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.